All right. Um, my name is Dr. Karen Brandon. I'm the president of the PT Board of California. It is 9 a.m. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Thursday, March 19, 2026. This is a one-day meeting of the Physical Therapy Board of California. Today we are meeting in the hearing room at Department of Consumer Affairs, 2005 Evergreen Street, Hearing Room, Sacramento, California, 95815. We are also meeting virtually via a WebEx component provided by California Department of Consumer Affairs. This is an official business meeting of the Physical Therapy Board. The board's role remains to maintain consumer protection and consult with local and state entities on laws and regulations pertaining to physical therapy industry. We will take public comment on specific agenda items, and at the end of the meeting, there will be a comment section for items not on the agenda. Public comments must be specific to the agenda item that is being discussed. If you make a comment during a specific agenda item that is not related to the topic, you will be directed to hold your comments until we reach the appropriate agenda item. All comments that do not directly relate to an item on the agenda should be held until the agenda item for items not on the agenda. The board follows the Open Meeting Act. So while we accept and appreciate the public's comments, we cannot respond to those comments. Individuals listening to the meeting will have an opportunity to provide public comment and will be assisted by a moderator who will be facilitating the teleconferencing process via WebEx. For those members of the public participating via teleconference, please wait until the moderator has introduced you before making your comments. To request to make a comment during public comment period, the moderator will direct you with the instructions. This meeting is being recorded, and the minutes of the meeting will be prepared. Can we please have a roll call?
Karen Brandon,
Here.
Dale Armstrong,
Here.
Tala Califf, Tanya McMillan. Tanya McMillan is absent, and Samuel Q.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. Before I head straight into agenda item number 4, as board president, I would like to welcome everyone here today in person, the board members, the staff, stakeholders, and especially members of the public. And I would also like to introduce Ann Salisbury, the Assistant Chief Counsel, who will be sitting in for us for our Michael, our legal counsel who is assigned to the board. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
All right, so I would like to move on to the agenda item number 4, and I'm going to ask if it's all right that we put agenda item 4, 5, and 6, which are all review, discussion, and possible action regarding the minutes of the last 3 board meetings together as we do the review, and then I will still take public comment, and then we will vote. Okay. So is there any discussion on the item number 4, which is September 23 to 24 meeting minutes?
Dr. Brandon, would you like me to read the mission statement?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought that I already asked you. Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Brandon. The mission of the PT Board of California is to protect the people of California by the effective administration of the Physical Therapy Practice Act.
So appreciated. Thank you very much. Okay, so that was item number 3, and now we're moving on to 4, which is the review and discussion of the meeting minutes. Does anyone have any comments or questions about the meeting minutes from September 23 and 24 meeting? Okay. And what about the meeting minutes for November 19? Hearing none from the board members, how about discussion of meeting minutes from December 11 to 12? I'm really glad you guys all did homework and reviewed them already. All right. So is there any public comment regarding, I'm sorry. Do we have a motion to accept these meeting minutes?
I move to accept the meeting minutes of September 23rd 24th, uh, November 19th, 2025, and December 11th and 12th, 2025.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. And now is there any discussion, public comment, I mean? In the audience here, no. Any online?
Thank you, President Brandon. If any member of the public would like to comment on these agenda items, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, pressing *3. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator. I see no request for comment. Madam President, I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. I'd like to then take a vote. Can we do the roll call?
Karen Brandon,
Yes.
Dale Armstrong,
Yes.
Tala Califf, Tanya McMillan is absent. Samuel Q.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much. All right. We're going to move on to number 7, agenda item President's Report. And we are just going to look at A and note if there's any adjustments or modifications that need to be made in the 2026 adopted meeting calendar.
I do have a conflict on June 26th.
Okay, so June 26th is the Friday. So the meeting starts the 25th and the 26th. What are our options, Jason?
One, I'll just say I appreciate revisiting this topic. Right now, we're down to 5 members, and a single absence takes us right to quorum. So I really like let's look at the calendar, make sure that. So thank you, Thank you, Mr. Cree, for bringing it up. At first glance, I could say one of the things that we could look at is adjusting the meeting a day ahead and do 24, 25.
That'd be okay for me. I don't know. Yeah.
I have no conflict.
Okay. The other alternative also is dependent upon, this is a rather light board meeting. We don't have any petitions for modification or reinstatement, but I know that we do in June. So as soon as you know whether or not we can move that a day forward, please let me know as soon as possible so we can let the petitioners know also. The only other possibility is if we take that down to a single day, which we could and do just Thursday, but with petitions and then board business, that might be a tight schedule. It could be a late evening. So as soon as you know, please let me know. And then I'll confer with the board president and we'll look at the schedule. And if there are any changes, we'll get those changes sent out to you as soon as possible. Anything other than June?
Everyone clear for September 23, 24 and December 8, 9? Okay. Can I also go on to discussion of 2027?
Mhm.
And then I'll take public comment after that.
Dr. Bennett, I just had a question about the December meeting. Is it 8, 9, or 10, 11? Is it?
I have 8, 9, and I think just based on discussion last time we were talking about, because of the December holidays, we were moving it forward to Tuesday, Wednesday, and I believe there might have been another board issue with council,
Okay, thank you for
a
the
coverage issue. Okay.
Okay,
I think that adjustment might have been partly on our behalf, but also on legal representation too.
okay, 8. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have the page for the schedule for 2027? Let me see. Okay, that's meetings material, page 73. Jason, do you want to share anything about the dates and the locations for 2027?
Some of them are to be determined. I'm going to touch on it a little bit in my executive officer's report. But for members, what I'd kind of just point out is similar to this upcoming June, we had a Thursday, Friday. At one point, we kind of settled on, and that was with a different composition of board members, that when we were in Sacramento, Thursday, Friday worked better. And then when we were on the road, we would do Wednesday, Thursday. I would just ask that, we revisit that, conversation, consideration for everybody that's here now. We may have new members by then also, right? So if Thursday, Fridays don't work, let us know so we can make those kind of changes and try to move some things around. For location, we're trying to target March of 27 for the Bay Area, and then a travel meeting that September to Southern California.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, are there any questions or comments from the board about the options for 2027? Okay. Are we voting on this one today?
It's not necessary.
Not
Yeah.
necessary, not
We're just planning well in advance.
Okay, thank you. All right, so is there any public comment on agenda items 7A and B? None in person. Is there any public comment online for agenda items A and B?
Thank you,
7A and B.
Thank you, President Brandon. If any member of the public would like to comment, please click on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, press star 3. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're moving on to the 7C, President's Report Committee updates. I will go ahead and share a little bit about our Sunset Review Committee. The committee representing the board to the joint BMP Committee for Oversight met March 10 up at the Capitol to review our sunset report to the legislators. And I feel like it was really a great experience. I know that sounds interesting because it's also very intense. And, but I think what it did for me personally is it really did represent kind of the whole background on why we do this, the fact that we are stewards of our state and the consumers of the state and the people of the state, and that we should be pretty much at any time ready to demonstrate what our utility is and the value and the purpose that we serve. And I really thank the staff specifically for the hard work they did, not just the year of sunset review, but the fact that they keep continuing to put in excellent work that basically made it a lot easier for our committee this year to pull together the information necessary to share with the legislators and to be able to answer their questions and all the background information in the issues paper. Dale, would you like to share anything specific about the committee?
I was here during the last 2022 sunset. However, I was not on the subcommittee. And so in being a member of the subcommittee, I learned so much about the process, and there was so much that went into it besides just the hearing day. And I thought it was extremely interesting. I learned a lot about the board, about the process, about DCA. So it was a good experience. Very busy. I was
Definitely. And yeah, I think also the opportunity to be representing this board along with seeing how other boards interact and their issues and some of the common challenges, but also kind of also in a way very proud of the work that we do and how we do it. and getting some really good ideas on things that we can do better. I mean, we can always do things better, and being able to answer some of the tough questions. I found myself trying to figure out how we would answer some of those questions, Jason, that were being asked of the different boards that were before and after us. So anything else you want to share about that piece?
Sure. I guess I'd start by thanking both of you for making yourselves available and providing testimony at the hearing. I would apologize to Dr. Armstrong for the technical difficulties that we experienced. At the same time, I would say there were 4 boards that went that day. We were not the shortest board, but if I subtracted the technical difficulties time out of our presentation, we were the shortest presentation in the hearing. So, but I totally agree with Dr. Brandon. Sunset is an opportunity for us to demonstrate uh, the necessity of regulation for this profession and the effectiveness of this board and its staff, right? And I said it at the hearing in case any of my staff didn't have the opportunity to watch. Um, that report is more than just statistics and data and narrative. It actually shows, how much commitment is actually given by each and every member of staff towards that consumer protection. So it went very well. You both represented very well. And I would say that you both completely over-prepared, but you each could have answered any question that was asked of you. And I think that's even more important.
Well,
Thank
th-
you.
well, thank you. Thank you very much. We felt prepared because of your leadership as well. All right. So I would like to ask Mr. Q to share a little bit about the executive officer um, subcommittee compensation.
Yes, we are, the subcommittee is still working on the EPR request with DCA Human Resources Office. And we had one meeting, I believe in February, in discussion of the data collections and different type of reporting um, that we're collecting information to support the EPR request. And we are hoping to work out the all the data points and summarize them and prepare to report to the board in June.
Okay.
Okay.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. All right, I'll take any public comment on agenda item 7C, committee updates. There's none in person at this time. Moderator?
Thank you, President Brandon. If any member of the public would like to comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, pressing *3. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, I see no requests for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 8, Mr. Kaiser, Executive Officer Report.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for being here. We did have a slight change of plans for this meeting, both for meeting dates and location. So thank you, members, for your patience. We originally had scheduled a 2-day meeting at the Gurnick Academy of Medical Arts in San Jose. But between budget cuts and travel restrictions, we've limited the meeting to today and here in Sacramento. The contributing factor to our rescheduling is that in our planning of the San Jose meeting, we learned of the NVIDIA AI conference and expo. And just in planning the logistics for that meeting, found out that there were no hotel rooms available in a 100-mile radius of the city of San Jose. So, but I'd like to thank Gurnick Academy for their willingness to host and apologize for the cancellation. We'll do what we can and try to make it up to them. So, for executive services, for outreach last quarter, I reported to this board that we were extremely busy. We had 8 outreach events and we had a couple on the road events and a couple consumer events. This quarter is still busy. 11 outreach presentations across the state to both PT and PTA programs.
Mm.
Couple late nights, couple PTA program Friday nights. So I'd like to thank my co-presenter, Paul Rowe. We found out we have a very good comedic combination. Our timing works really well together. So I think we're going to do that a couple more times. And then just a special thank you to Dr. Brandon. All your work towards filling our board member vacancies. And something that we'll talk about during the outreach presentation is a new campaign that we're working on with DCA's Office of Public Affairs for our board member vacancies. And a second, thanks to Dr. Brandon again, who's already sat down for an interview for that campaign. And then a extended thanks to the rest of the members today who may not realize they may also be interviewed today for that campaign. So for admin services, in Q2, we spent about 4.2 million of our $7.2 million budget, which is about 57%. We're a little ahead of the curve. But again, just to demonstrate that we're living within our means, for year to date, we've collected 4.5 million in revenue. So a surplus of roughly about $350,000. But that's just that point of recall of looking back at expenditures versus revenues, not just expenditure of allocated budget. So we will be discussing monies further under agenda item 9A, our fee cap, which is the recommendation to increase the board's statutory fee caps as part of the sunset review process, and agenda item number 12B under the budget report. For licensing services, last quarter I spoke to an almost 10% increase in applications received, largely due to a rise in PTA applications, and it's not slowing down. So this quarter saw an overall increase of 13% of applications received, in part to an increase in foreign trained applications and endorsement applications. And applications and licensing staff will speak to that. For the Consumer Protection Services, our enforcement manager, Carol Phelps, couldn't join us today, but in her place, analyst James Heaton will be providing the CPS report, and I won't steal any of his thunder. So that's what I have for the executive office report.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or discussion from the board members? Okay, we're going to get into all of those in detail more. Nope. Okay, and is there any public comment for agenda item 8, A through D? None in person. Moderator, please check online.
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, pressing *3. We are displaying instructions and will give you a moment. All right, I see no request for comment. I return the floor back to you. And just a note, I'm going to make Matt Nishimini, forgive me, the presenter so he can share his screen.
Thank you. We are going to take a short break right here to make sure that everything is working. We will reconvene at 9:30. So a little break, bathroom break as needed. Thank you. 9:30. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. We are moving on to agenda item number 9. Mr. Kaiser, can you introduce the topic?
Yeah, so sub A under 9 is the recommendation to increase the board's statutory fee caps as part of the sunset review process. I'm going to do an introduction, and I've asked for official titles. I've never really gotten a clear official title, but I'd like to introduce Matt Nishimi from the Department of Consumer Affairs Budget Office, who I've been told is a senior budget analyst and special project coordinator. But I just kind of summarize it as like budget guru extraordinaire, right? So he's going to walk us through the methodology that we've used to establish a proposal for a fee cap and a recommendation to the Sunset Committee to include in our Sunrise bill. I think that this will probably be the most engaging topic of discussion for today. So I'll hand it over to Matt, and I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to kind of co-present this as we go through the process.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Kaiser. My name is Matt Nishimini, and I am a senior fiscal advisor with the Department of Consumer Affairs. I'm responsible for all the economic and fiscal analyses for all the regulations going through the department for every board and for every bureau. I also assist boards and bureaus to complete fee and revenue analyses for both regulatory and statutory fee proposals, which is why I'm here today. So beginning last November, I started meeting with the board, Assistant Executive Officer Conley, and some of the staff and management, and then later with Mr. Kaiser. We began a series of interview sessions weekly, sometimes more than once a week, to sort through the board's workload process mapping, application data statistics, staffing compositions, direct and indirect costs, just to name a few, to map out a data-driven assessment of the cost inputs of the board's various fee types. We call this a driver-based cost model. The amounts being considered today and the fees being considered today are a direct result of our findings, which we will review in a few minutes. So again, just as some background, the board's main license fees, primary revenue drivers, are all currently at the statutory caps. So physician assistants, a physical therapist, initial applications currently are at $300. The statutory cap is $300. The PT application is currently $300. The statutory cap is $300. So there is no room to move up, which is why Mr. Kaiser last week at the Sunset mentioned the possibility of seeking statutory caps, increases to those caps. So in your board meeting materials, you'll find a fund condition statement. It's going to look like this. I'm not sure which page it's on. And so there are two fund condition statements. We're going to look at this first one here. It has sort of a gray banner up in the upper left.
Should have it as a handout.
And it'll be in your handout, sorry. And so this is a 2026-27 governor's budget fund condition statement. And it's been updated through fiscal month 7. That's what FM7 means, which is through January. And so in the current year column, which is that second column with pink sunset above it, those numbers are updated through the month of January with our best information. So this standard fund condition statement, so we read it top to bottom, left to right. It's going to start with it's just like a checkbook. It starts with a starting balance. We have revenues sort of in the middle section here. Then we have expenditures towards the bottom, and then you end up with an ending balance. That ending balance rolls to the next column, so on and so forth. So in this fund condition statement, we've also added a purple row here, about 2/3 towards the bottom. And this is estimated current year Attorney General and Office of Administrative Hearings augmentation. And we have $305,000. And this is our latest projection on what the need is going to be. So in other words, the board is currently appropriated a certain amount for Attorney General and Office of Administrative Costs. But those costs are anticipated to exceed the budgeted amount. As a result, we have statutory budget bill language that allows the board to seek an augmentation, which my office is doing. You can also see towards the bottom, we have this green, yellow, and red ribbon at the bottom. This is the months in reserve. So we can see that, say for column 24, the first column, 24, 25, the board ended with $5.786 million, which represented 8.4 months in reserve. And we see this reserve balance decreasing over time. And so we've colored it. Green would be, okay, and yellow is starting to go yellow. It's less healthy. And then we see pink and red towards the out years. And it goes red in 2031, 32. And we can't have that. At the very bottom, we have a salmon colored ribbon, which shows the structural imbalance. Structural imbalance is the difference between revenues brought in and expenditures going out. And so you get an idea. So like in the current year, 25, 26, your expenditures are going to exceed your revenues by $743,000 is what our projection is. You can also see this structural imbalance is going to increase over time. It accelerates over time, which is why you need to take some action. You have three options. You can either cut costs, you can increase revenues, or you can do a combination of the two. Those are your three options. Any questions on this fund condition statement? Okay, then let's look at the next one. So this is very similar to the first one. The only difference is that in that purple line where we had the current year augmentation for the AG and the OAH, we've projected out possible future augmentation. So in the previous fund condition statement, we had 305,000 in the current year. Now we have 350 built out in the budget year and 400 ongoing. We think that this is a prudent, reasonable estimate based upon the current year augmentation request. Plus, the board did request an augmentation in the prior year. So we do see this trend. I've also added a second bar, sort of orangish, unanticipated costs. This is 5% of the total appropriation. And so that's 400,000. And I don't have this starting until 27, 28. But this is a small, 5% is a very small variance. So we also think it's reasonable. So what are unanticipated costs? Unanticipated costs could be legislation. There could be a bill that increases the board's mandates, which requires additional staffing, additional resources. That would be an example. Another example would be a spike in enforcement-related costs. So in addition to AG, maybe there are more cases that require greater investigation. I'd also note that AG and OH costs are out of the board's control. It's a different agency. And so to the extent you are processing your enforcement activities to the AG, you get a bill, right? You don't have any control on that. Your only control would be to throttle back your enforcement-related activities. And we're not advocating that. Unanticipated costs could also be other board priorities, right? You might be thinking, oh, we should be doing this, we should be targeting this. I have heard in some of your prior board meetings that this board wants to target a 12-month reserve balance. So that would be another priority. Okay, notably, the red has accelerated by 2 years now, right? By these simple augmentations, now you are going into the red, going into your sunset. And really, there is cause for concern. The pink in 28, 29, we have some concerns there. Any questions? So there's also another handout in your handout. It looks like this. I just want to talk about this just for a second. It says driver-based cost model at the top. And I mentioned driver-based cost model earlier. So this is the methodology, the analytical methodology that we undertook to complete the analysis. So they're cost drivers. There are direct and indirect costs. Direct costs are the actual cost to process a single application. So we do it on a per application basis, and we're going to look at some of those workloads in a minute. But there are licensing process tasks. So the application comes in, staff does a series of workload tasks. So we chart those. And then we assign times to each one of those time tasking. And then we allocate the staffing composition. Who is doing what? At what step? At each step. There are also indirect costs. Indirect costs could be programming. It could be a cost to actually regulate your licensees. It could also be enforcement-related costs, which are, AG, investigations. It's also all the operating expenses and equipment, OE&E, keeping the lights on, rent, IT. And it also includes DCA and statewide administrative costs, sometimes referred to as pro rata. So it's the centralized service cost that DCA provides to the board, as well as the state provides to all the state entities. So we allocate all of these costs. We come up with the total cost per application. And then that's what we're going to look at in a second. Any questions about this?
Matt, do you mind if I add to it a little bit?
Yeah, please.
So one of the things that this board has probably heard me speak ad nauseum about anticipated costs and augmentations. We've made this request in previous sunsets in anticipation, but what I wanted to kind of highlight is there are some differences between our previous requests and this request. Speaking to the direct costs and the indirect costs. The direct costs first. As the licensing population grows, the measure of workload increases with it, and at some point in ratio, the staffing has to increase to a certain extent. So we've talked about for about 2 years now that in the near future, we're going to have to start looking at budget change proposals to increase staffing for both the licensing units and the enforcement units to account for the increases in the size. The more emergent issue is really the indirect costs. And Matt spoke about the augmentation process that we did last year and this year to augment the funding for the Office of the Attorney General and the Office of Administrative Hearings. We've done that before, right? We've had situations in the past where we would collect 3 years worth of data, 3 years of augmentations, and then propose a budget change proposal, essentially to equalize that line item and put it into a more appropriate allocation. To Matt's point, with enforcement, you can never really anticipate the number of complaints a board is going to receive, right? Or to what complexity each case is going to be, how much investigation it's going to require. That was the experience we had in the past. We had an increase in complaints, we had an increase in complexity, so we pursued augmentations for that. The driver behind these augmentations is a little bit different, right? We've had a substantial increase in hourly costs charged both by the Office of the Attorney General and by the Office of Administrative Hearings. So the driver is different. But those costs aren't going to go down, right? So this time around, we sought an augmentation last fiscal year. We've sought an augmentation this fiscal year. And best practices normally would be to establish 3 fiscal years before you would pursue a budget change proposal. And we've decided that's not going to be the case. We're not going to wait that long because the driver's different. It's static. It's not as dynamic as it's been in the past. Those attorney general costs are not going to go down. The hourly rate is, if anything, probably going to increase in the next couple of years, along with the Office of Administrative Hearings. So that indirect input for enforcement, I just want to highlight, is not about, while it's a contributing factor of increased complaints and increased complexity, the main driver is that we're paying more in the adjudication of our cases. So, and because of that, Matt has built into that second display what the augmentations would look like if we don't receive an adjustment in allocation for that budget line item. And that's when you really see those months of red start to come to us earlier. So I just wanted to point out the difference in the indirect costs, whether they're actually enforcement related as more complaints or more bad actors. That's not necessarily the case. It really is just about the expense of doing business at this point.
To clarify that, is so are we saying that the second estimate is closer to what reality is going to be?
As far as the purple line of adding the $400,000 augmentation, yeah, I think that we both agree is that's a fairly conservative ask for a change in allocation for the budget line item because of last year's numbers, because of this year's numbers, and understanding that it is that more static change in what we pay to the Office of the Attorney General per hour, not because of the volume of cases going through the Office of the Attorney General, right? So that's what that idea is still in concept though, right? We're using that number here for just kind of rough estimates. We will have to be much more substantive in what we provide as a justification for a budget change proposal.
Okay. Also, a question regarding the pro rata. I don't see any um, adjustments to that. Are we pretty confident that it's going to stay flat?
So so if you do see the 1111 line here just above the purple line,
Mm-hmm.
we do see that in budget year plus one, so in 27-28, we grow this by 3%. So in other words, in 27-28, there's 7.632 million. Going out to the right, 7.861 million. That's 3% growth, and so on and so forth. That's going to allocate for the DCA centralized services, DCA pro rata. The statewide pro rata, the 552, we currently have flatlined. And we do have another model where it does grow. And I can explain that when we get to that model. The reason why it's static here is because it's a much more complicated calculation done at the state level. It's based upon the entire statewide budget. And then it's statewide pro rata is only allocated to special funds. So if you're general funded, they're going to take it right off the top and allocate for your administrative costs. They're going to net that out. If you're a special funded program, like most all DCA programs are, you get a statewide pro rata assessment. And that calculation, again, is based upon the overall budget. So that changes from year to year. And then it also is based upon usage. So if you have staff that are calling the state controller's office, or you have a bigger program, will pay more because the state controller is the classic example. They have to issue more check warrants, right? So that's more work for them. You're going to be paying a higher allocation. But they do balance it out over time. And I'm going to walk you through that in about a minute.
Right. Thank you.
But, and I'll just add to that though, Sam. So I just alluded to the fact that we are looking at pursuing a budget change proposal for the enforcement costs rooted in those indirect costs. We're also looking at a budget change proposal for the OE&E, the operating expenses part of an increase as well.
Thank you.
How long has it been since how many years back since we were at the recommended DCA reserve of 12 to 15 months?
So, so DCA doesn't have a formal recommendation on what a fund balance should be. This board has a statutory cap of 24 months. So you can have up to 24 months by law. So I like to think of it, everyone is more or less risk averse, right? Some folks like more money in their checkbook than others, and it's no different. So you have to think of it as what are your priorities? What do you feel comfortable with as a board? We know you can't go insolvent, so start there. Um, that said, I think we are seeing more boards kind of adopt that 12 to 10 to 12-month range, uh, knowing that uh, inflationary pressures are sort of upon us and have been for several years and will likely go into the future. So we do see boards kind of keeping a rainy day fund, keeping a little bit more. Perhaps, and also there's also other variables. If you have a growing population, right, growing licensee population, especially renewal licenses, which is your main revenue driver, that might be different versus if you have a declining population, right? Then you might want to adjust. There could be tipping points too, right? There's price elasticity. You charge too much, folks drop out, things like that. I would just note what you're considering today, changes to your statutory caps is not going to increase the fee amounts, right? The fee amounts would be done through a regulatory process in the future. All this discussion is to raise the current cap levels to provide you board members with the flexibility to meet the challenges over the next 4 or 5 years.
Dr. Armstrong, that's an interesting question, and I never really thought about it. I can tell you in the 15 years that I've been here, we've never enjoyed more than a 10-month fund reserve. To Matt's point, while there's no recommendation, right, there are those statutory limits, and there's some guidelines with those limits as well, right? So if you have more than 24 months in reserve, you should reduce the fees that you pass on to your licensees by a reduction of the renewal fee. The other kind of general guidance is if you fall under 3 months is when you should, at the very least, start increasing your fees. So the statutory cap, and I love Matt's pointing out of risk adverse because I am, right? And so you've heard me say here that I would very much like to have that double digit 12 months in reserve. Because there are other and unanticipated costs that this board might be burdened with, and you can never, you should plan for a worst case scenario. And aside from an increase in staffing or an increase in pass-through costs or indirect costs with AG and those kind of clients, litigation, I've seen issues, not necessarily here, although this board has had board-on-board litigation in our history. But other boards that are coming up against financial hard times, and to Matt's point, that insolvency point can actually lead a board to having to seek funding elsewhere by taking on loans and additional interest burdens for the future from other boards that might be able to afford to loan them that money. So for me, I'm risk averse in the sense that a year of fund condition, I wouldn't even describe as ideal, but I would be much more comfortable with it at that point. And I think that there's a reason that the cap was set at 24 months. And especially as you have to take into consideration the size of the profession and the regulation. This is a 50,000, close to a little over 40,000 licensing population between two license types. But if you compare that to some of our brother and sister boards at DCA that have 500,000 licensees, these numbers change, right? The tipping point alerts change at that point. So the guidance necessarily isn't DCA saying 12 to 14 months, but it's definitely my comfort point.
I do have one more question, sorry. So I'm relying on my memory, but I think that our last ask for an increase in cap was 2009, and we actually didn't increase fees until 2016. Do we have somewhat of a projection as to we increase the cap, and then what is the projection that we would need to increase fees?
So we asked for cap increase in 21 also, and cap increase in 16. We haven't changed the caps themselves since 2009. And then we went from, there's a lot of different fees, but generally speaking, we went from a $150 cap to a $300 cap. We increased those fees in 15, 16, and we've been there since. To Matt's point, this is just an increase in the caps. What we would have to enter into that point after that authorization was given to us by the legislature is a promulgation of regulation process, right? So we would have to do a workforce or a work data analysis to determine what the fee increase needs to be to maintain operational need. And Matt will touch on that a little bit too, in a dashboard that he's going to use to kind of walk us through that. But that's a completely separate assessment, open to public engagement and stakeholder engagement. And we would have to be much more diligent in our analysis to substantiate whatever that fee might be. When we were in sunset in 2021, we were very clear that the only thing we were pursuing was a cap so that we could get to that more comfortable point of 12 months. The conversation's changed a little bit now, right? We're talking about increasing the caps because we foresee a fee increase in the next 2 to 3 fiscal years.
Thank you.
I had a question just to go back for a second about the revenue we get from our licensing fees. What percentage of our total revenue does it represent? And is that consistent with other boards?
So I'm not sure I understand what the question is.
Of our total revenue income, how much is what we collect from just our licensing?
Oh, yes, very consistent. So all of the programs are license fee-based
Mm.
primarily.
Mhm.
The Bureau of Automotive Repair is a little different. They get some money from smog abatement fees and things like that. But for all the healing arts, for all the boards and bureaus in this building, it's all license fee-based.
And the ratio is most similar for the healing arts boards, right? So I think what you're looking at is the ratio between application fees to renewal fees, as an example.
Application fees, renewal fees
Cost recovery.
to any other
Yeah.
part of our revenue, actually.
So those models across healthcare are very similar. You might see them vary by maybe 5 to 10%. A board that is more involved in the administration of the examination process might have more revenue generated as a point of that. We enjoy a national accredited examination that is a pass-through straight to the licensee. So you won't see that as a revenue generator for us. It is simply just the application and the initial licensing fee. So there are going to be some slight different models depending on how involved a board might be in that. And then even past that, some boards have very controlled legislative language when it comes to cost recovery or not even having the authority for cost recovery. So that's not a recompense payback to the system kind of process. But in general, you can say that about 80% of revenues are going to be generated by renewal, about 10 to 15 by the application process, and the rest by miscellaneous fees collected, including cost recovery or citation and fine authority. Citation and fine would be a really good example too. If you take a board like Barbering and Cosmetology, who have because of the need and the type of enforcement that they do, they have a much larger use of that citation and fine authority. They can write citations as they visit spas and hair salons. So their citation fine, collection of revenue dwarfs ours, right? But it's just a difference in the model.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to understand. The majority of our revenue is from
Renewal.
renewal, and it's approximately 80.
Yes.
And I'll just dovetail off of Mr. Kaiser's comments. So citation and fine revenue, it's unreliable, right? So it's very difficult to budget around. Some folks could be issued a citation and a fine and then move to, Missouri, and you're not going to see that. So really, we need to budget off of the license fees.
Mm.
do we have different layers of license fees? Meaning, if it's a business operation, do we charge another license fee on top of the renewal of the personal?
No, but thank you for bringing that point up because there are boards that do have those kind of DBAs, fictitious name permits, those kind of models. This board has always focused all of the liability or the responsibility on the parent license of a physical therapist or a physical therapist assistant. So it's not necessarily about, as an example, a PT working in multiple practices. We're not asking for any kind of revenue for each and every practice that they work in, right? So um, there are some pros and cons to those models, but it's nothing that I've actually ever considered or saw the benefit or the burden of providing to the licensing population for.
And just one of the things that I think reading one of the cases reminded me that when investigating a business that had multiple
Mhm.
layers of PT participations, um, it inevitably demands more cost for investigation.
Mhm.
Um, so, and then, it complicates the case, right? And in the case that you could have a person that is in charge of the business also is involved in the disposition or discharge of
Absolutely.
the responsibilities. So from that angle, I see that for that type of business license enterprise, I mean, a fee would be reasonable.
There's certainly a potentiality there. One of the things that I think is actually kind of beautiful about our fee structure and that process, though, um, and theoretically, um, in a case like that where there are multiple licensees involved in the same clinic or the same network of clinics, um, we're still able to maintain consumer protection by holding the licensees responsible. And some of the guidance that we give those licensees is please don't subject your license to discipline because of a business model or something that an employer forces upon you. This is your property right. This is your privilege to practice this art and science. Um, in those instances, though, where we see um, great harm or liability fall onto a business owner who may not be a licensee, we have pursued in the past unlicensed practice, right? So we do have remedies to collect. They're limited. In fact, we kind of talked about them in our sunset hearing when we were asked the artificial intelligence question, because we see that as becoming an emerging issue where large corporations, companies, app companies who are providing arguably healthcare or even physical therapy services without a licensee involved, we see as the same thing as unlicensed practice of physical therapy. And the only method that we have to pursue those folks is through a citation process for unlicensed activity. That limits us because each and every instance is a cap of a $5,000 fine, right? And so one of the things that we've talked about um, possibly pursuing in the future is legislative change to that authority to increase that, because when you start talking about volume and magnitude of large corporations, $5,000 might not be a sufficient deterrent, right? It might be something that they're willing to pay just to continue to do business. And past that point, we also could collaborate with the district attorney and pursue actual criminal charges to a misdemeanor level. So we have that. Um, the other part is for those isolated examples where we know that there are multiple practitioners in a single clinic or a single network facility. Um, that's actually pretty rare, right? So to impose a large structure on top of that for DBAs or business entities or locations, I don't know that I would see it as being necessary in consideration of the burden that it puts on those folks or even the advantage that it provides to us in those enforcement actions.
You can continue.
Very good. It was fantastic conversation. We always enjoy hearing boards go through this type of deliberation. There's also in your handout this workload, and there's actually 3 of them. And so this is actually the findings and what we did, and I'll just walk you through this. So this first one is for physical therapist, application and license, initial license. So towards the top, you can see workload tasks. So we have a column of the tasks, actual workload tasks that each application goes through. We do it on a per application basis, and I'll explain that in a second. And then we do time tasking, so 10 minutes. So for that first one, it's intake, log, and assign to analyst, takes 10 minutes. And then over to the right, the 3 columns, an OT as an office technician, an SSA as a staff services analyst, and an AGPA as an associate government program analyst. So that's the staffing composition. So in this case, there's some intake, there's some cashiering. You have to run some trial balances for management likely. Initial review of the application, it takes 30 minutes. Some deficiency letters prepared and sent. Communication, folks are calling in saying, you know, what's the status of my application? How do I fill this out, et cetera. Exam accommodations, fingerprint background check, PT license application status, enforcement. There's some enforcement review. Now that's only 30% of the time. Not every application is going through that, so that's why it's 0.3. And then the final approval. So we add up all of those times per staff, minutes per staff. We convert that to hours, and then we allocate the hourly rate salary to that. In this case, if we were to add all of those up, it comes to $323 in direct costs. And then we overlay the indirect cost allocation. Again, that's all the indirect costs divided by the number of active licensees and the initial applicants. And we come to 328 for a total of 651. That's today's dollars. That's what it's costing the board today. And as a reminder, so statutory limit is 300 for the app and 150 for the initial license. That's 450. So you're actually subsidizing that workload, which we know because you're structurally imbalanced, right? So we know that you're not bringing in enough. In this current year, it's about, what, 750,000, I think I reported earlier. So we know you're not recouping enough money for the workload you're doing.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are foreign trained initial applications in this?
No, we looked at it as part of the analysis, but one of the things that we figured out very quickly is the foreign trained application is so, it's a higher level of analysis, but it's also more, there's a lower volume, but each individual application is more intricate and time consuming, right? Spans a longer period of time. So that those numbers aren't even aren't included here. The only place that they're included here is under that indirect cost allocation, right? So essentially, to Matt's point, the rest of the board doing business divided by the licensing population. Other things that aren't included here, you don't see any members of the management teams involved in any of these calculations, right? This is like just the basic, the day-to-day operation of the processing the application, average and mean, really not the worst case scenarios, not the cases that need to be escalated or anything like that, just like the meat and potatoes of the application process itself.
That was my second question, military, because actually they're expedited. So
That's
is that-
included here, though.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So we've also added a little sub chart down at the bottom here, and this would be projected cost moving out over the next 5 years. We've got the indirect cost and the direct cost and the total cost. And this is out to the bottom is the 2030, 31 year. So that would get you past sunset. Just to give you some perspective. So a 1 year past sunset, this same fee is projected to cost the board $755. We use that 3% growth that I mentioned earlier. And that's consistent with the bargaining units, the collective bargaining units, 3% every year. So we did an analysis for the PT's application and initial license. There's also a PT application and initial license. In this one, it's a little different. We don't have indirect costs here, and that's because of the way the structure is for the PTA initial application. And then we have the third page is renewals for both PTs and PTAs. So again, this is a cost-based, driver model, right? We see what the actual cost inputs on a per application basis.
So in order to preserve or increase the amount of reserves, we actually have to go higher on the cap. On what's presented here, right? This is a cost-based.
Yes, and we see that validated in the fund condition statement because we know you're structurally imbalanced, right? And if you look at the ribbon at the bottom, that's how much you're structurally imbalanced, right? So we know you're not bringing in enough money, and this is just validating that. I will say we do a quality control cross-check on this workload analysis to make sure that the hours and the application workload matches what the staffing composition of the board is. That's our final cross-check on this to make sure it's reasonable and accurate.
I have a question. What, was this done in a previous year that we would have a comparison?
The last major study that we did was part of the actual fee increase in 15-16. But looking at fees and applications, even when we were in 2021, we didn't do it to this degree, right? We didn't include it as the presentation and asking for the increase in caps. We understood, but it wasn't an emergent issue either. We didn't see a need for actually increasing the fees charged to licensees or applicants at the time. At the time, we were just asking for an increase in caps for anything that might be coming down the road. But the actual assessment for the fees hasn't really been done since 15-16 as part of that fee increase.
And the majority of the information that is different has to do with the amount of compensation and the indirect cost increase from what you remember from the.
It's a much larger factor. On top of that, and one of the things that we haven't touched on yet is the recent executive orders that resulted in an 8% reduction of our overall budget, and then vacancy sweeps also, right? So this is the unfortunate effect of doing business where the pendulum kind of swings the other way, right? We slimmed down a little bit, and we probably slimmed down past the point of practicality. So here we are in a more emergent situation and having to adjust. Oh, just one note to Dr. Armstrong's question about the foreign trained. I just wanted to highlight, looking back at the most recent strategic plan, one of the goals and objectives is to look at the foreign trained assessment and determine if there are any kind of licensure barriers. Is it still sustainable? Is it still sufficient? Does it do what it needs to do? And we're still in the process of looking at that.
The question, has there been a calculation done to what the minimum increase of a cap looks like to stay in the positive one?
So on the screen in front of you, Matt has just shown you a virtual dashboard where we're going to be able to look at the numbers live in real time. So we can actually play with the numbers a little bit and proposal and see what the actual outcome effect is, not only to what might be a proposed fee increase in the next couple of years, but what the end result will be in fund condition, right? So if we're really looking at trying to target to a 12-month fund condition, these numbers will help us determine what a reasonable number looks like to get there.
Okay.
Okay, very good. So as Mr. Kaiser just said, this is a dashboard here. At the top here, we have summary of your revenues. So you have your other regulatory fees. Anything shaded green would be ones that we would be discussing and maybe adjusting. So other regulatory fees, that's this first column, no proposed changes here. That's admin, endorsement fees, duplicate fees, retired license. We're not talking about those today. In this next section, the specialty ENMG and KEMG, those are not also up for discussion. But we are discussing the PTA, the application fee, the app fees, anything shaded green here. Moving from left to right, we've got the application. This is a 3-year average of what the applications are. We have the current fee level. And then in this orange and yellow, I just put in 500 right now and 600. So for the PTs, As, we show the current revenue, and then shaded green would be the projected revenue, and then out to the far right would be the incremental. So for example, this first one, if I set it back at 300, it zeroes out on the far right. Did you all catch that?
Yeah.
Okay. So if I switch this back to 500, the incremental additional revenue would be $157,000, almost $158,000. I also have this created right now so that if I change this 500, it's going to change the cell 4 down. So if I put it at 450, you notice that row 26, the app fee for the foreign applicants also stays consistent. So we have, these are the initials right here. And then down here, we have the renewals. So 500 for the PTAs and 500 for the PTs. Let me just set them all let me set this at 500. Whoops. Okay. And then down here, the delinquent fees per B&P code auto adjust. They're 50% of the renewal fees. So when we change the renewal fee, so for PTA, if I change that to 600, you notice at the bottom, why didn't that do that? All right, I'm going to have to, well, that should be 50% of that one. Okay, so that will auto adjust now. I'm going to put this back there. Okay. And that's just per law. Okay, so whatever changes you guys want to make here, I'm happy to entertain any adjustments. To the question before, how does that impact the fund condition statement? I'm going to toggle to the fund condition statement. You can see this. Here in the middle, we've got 3 green ribbons. That's going to show the incremental change that we were just looking on the far right columns per revenue section. So again, you can see that sort of that middle row, 14s and 15s. Those are the renewal license. That's the bulk of your license fees, revenues. And then 18 and 19, that's going to be your initials. This has those unanticipated costs, the additional AG and OAH augmentations, and the unanticipated costs in these ribbons here. And then it's going to show you're all green in your months in reserve. Yes, it does show that you would be exceeding 24 months, but again, this is a display only. You're not taking an action to increase your fees. That would be something that you would be doing in the future. And so maybe for the dashboard, you have up to $500. That doesn't mean you have to go all the way up to $500, right? You're at 300. Maybe you do incremental. Maybe you go 400, 450, 500. That's the purview of this board. And that's the wonderful thing about the regulatory system, the administrative process, because it isn't interactive and you have stakeholders come and you can hear them and you can get feedback and you can adjust. So again, it's really just for display purposes only. Any questions about any suggestions?
So going back to the proposed fee amount for renewal. I'm trying to find, so was it the top one that's green? After 300, it says 500. Is that the one that you changed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then is the app fee 600 separate?
Yeah, so these are the app
Okay.
fees here.
Okay, got it.
These are the initial app fees here, and then these are the renewal fees here.
Oh, those are renewal fees. Okay. Okay. So we have to set potential new caps for each of those sections that are in green? No, not in green. These right here, under the fees and the renewal fees, correct?
Yeah.
And not to complicate things further, you have, as the board, more latitude than that, right? So the question that you had asked about the ratio of revenues, right? Whether, in Matt's display, you could see increasing the cap from 300 to 500 for the app
Sorry.
fee. It's okay. Only generates, an additional $157,000 per year, right? So as board members, you have the latitude to determine which fees are more appropriate to generate revenue from, right? And there is a consideration to be made about barrier to entry of licensure and burden and those kind of things, right? So those are all the kind of things that I will just kind of keep poking at and reminding, right? Because you're not corralled in any certain way. There's a lot of conversation to be had here. Understanding that the renewal fee is really the largest source of revenue for the administration of the board. And then just to reemphasize Matt's point, this is just to talk about what this board would provide as a recommendation to the legislature to increase the caps for, that might assist us in controlling our budget and controlling our expenditures and revenues for the next 5 to 6 years, because the next opportunity we have is our next sunset, depending on when we're extended to. In our last sunset, the chair of the committee pointed out that we had been here in 2021 and we had asked for a fee increase, and he gave us a compliment that it turns out that you guys didn't need that. So good fiscal management. Thank you for doing that. But it is something to consider about the potentiality of, if anything had happened between 2021 and this year, we would have had to seek emergency legislation to address it, right? We would have had to find somebody who was willing to help us in a legislative session to increase our caps and simultaneously increase our floors, which I'm not a big fan of. I think that the regulatory process is a much more appropriate vehicle to, involve the stakeholders in the licensing population in discussions about any kind of fee increases. Going through a sunset and asking for both a fee cap increase and a fee floor increase, which is effectively changing your fees as part of that legislation, still a public, participatory process, but just not at that kind of granular level. So for here, we've put some numbers in the columns that, and Matt can show you on the fund condition, and we're making a lot of assumptions in this also, right? So even that purple line that we talked about, where the AG costs we think could sustain at $400,000 over the, in the projection, that's still a projection, right? That's not taking into effect or into consideration kind of and any other increases that the Attorney General might impose upon us in hourly fees, or even the Office of Administrative Hearings for that matter. A lot of conservative estimates.
Okay.
Let me just add, so as this model goes out into the future, it becomes less reliable, right? I'm pretty darn sure of the numbers today, right? I know what's happening today and tomorrow.
Mhm.
But 6 years out down the road, I'm less confident, and that's just the way the model works.
Well, thank you for presenting it in this fashion. I think it's really important to our stakeholders that we're as transparent as possible about how this information is determined, like how we get the details of how much it costs to do business, but also, like Mr. Kaiser said, the intentionality around all of the issues that are here, which are, we have multiple different fees to think about, as well as issues like entry to the profession, et cetera. Does anyone have any questions or comments? I had the question of the last one in 2016. It was from what, 125?
150 to
150 to
300.
300? The fee increase or the cap? Was
The cap increase was in 2009,
2009, and
Yeah.
that was from,
and it was from a cap of 150 to
Mhm.
a cap of 300.
Mhm.
And then 7 years, math is bad right there, 15 years later, no, 7 years, right? In 7 years, we increased the cap, we increased our fees to the cap.
and that was the application fee?
Both application fees and renewal fees.
This time around, so this exercise is to support that, um, what kind of cap we're talking about?
And only the cap.
Okay.
Mhm.
We're not considering where the fee's gonna be.
No, but I think it is important to kind of look at the projections and displays to see the potentiality of it. And then to even kind of drill into that conversation about the barrier to entry conversation. The caps still being what they are, just a cap in the legislative authority. The promulgation of regulation process could very well have a conversation involved in it that if we were proposing a fee increase of any kind, we could propose variable A for the renewal and substantiate it and why. But that's to Matt's point, it would be an incremental and based on operational need increase, right? We wouldn't be proposing to go straight to the cap. And then we'd have that same conversation about both the application fee, and that would be based on some of those labor statistics that we collected here, right? So because we have an idea of how much the actual application process is costing us, and we are subsidizing it with renewal fees currently. And then the initial licensing fee, which the initial licensing fee really is a licensee's first contribution to the board. It's not a renewal, it's just kind of like the newel, right? It's the first year that they're in the profession towards the administration of the cost. And that initial licensing fee, we would look at as a completely separate measure and analysis of making a determination in regulation of what we would increase it to, right? So we're going to have this conversation as it pertains to the potential and the caps. And then a year from now, 2 years from now, we're going to have another conversation in a whole different, more structured promulgation process involving stakeholders about actual proposal of fee increases themselves. And each individual fee will have to have its own substantiation.
Got it. So why are we waiting?
Waiting for a fee
Well,
increase?
yeah.
We don't, because we're at our caps. Yeah.
No, I understand.
Yeah, we
But
can't even
but if that cap is lifted, why not next year or as soon as it's lifted, then we
There's a
consider
potential
it
there,
or
right? So
Yeah.
once you need the legislative authority, right? And if
Mhm.
it's granted, whatever that cap would be would go into effect January 1st of 2027, right? The promulgation of regulation process itself can take anywhere from 8 to 16 months, right? Especially depending on like involvement of stakeholders and conversation going back and forth, public hearings, and what we're able to substantiate as what we think is a reasonable fee increase to maintain operational standard. So it's not that we're waiting, but we're also looking at our fund condition, right? It's a fine balance, right? We have to make sure that we're good stewards of the licensure money. But at some point, I think it's indisputable, an argument that as the licensing population grows, with it comes additional workload, right? Even if we just looked at simple numbers of, you know, if you have 40,000 licensees and 1% of your 0.5% of your licensees receive complaints. If that licensing population grows to 50,000, then you have that 0.5% proportionate increase in complaint intake, right? So, and that goes with the applications themselves, the initial licensing themselves, administration of the board. We have to grow as staff of the board in proportion to the size of the population that we regulate.
So as it stands right now, it's demonstrated that one application processed with direct and indirect costs is 600 and we're at a 300. It's about 50%.
Correct.
That's what it's demonstrating right now. I want to play the interactive game on your thing, only because of this. I do want to understand, as Mr. Q is saying, what it's going to look like when we make our first increase and how far out our fund is. If you could adjust the initial licensing fee to, let's say, 325, and then the next one to, what's the next one? It's the application fee. Yeah. App fee is also, okay, so that one would be 350. Let's just put that there. Okay. And then we have to go down to PTA. Is that right?
So you did PTA first.
Oh, it was up there. Okay, so then the PT initial, is that where we're at now?
Mhm.
We're at renewal.
Oh, well, so I
Which
did
ones
the
adjust?
PTA at
Okay.
325 and the PT at 350.
Let me just add a point of context for there is a difference between PT and PTA,
Yeah, he mentioned.
right? So PTs pay both a application fee and that then on top of that, the initial licensing fee or what I refer to as the newel, right? Their first contribution to the administration of the board. Physical therapist assistants pay that in a combined fee, right? It's really the only thing that we have that's different between a PT and a PTA when it comes to administration. I can't speak to what the intent of that was, right? It's been that way since I've been here. I feel like it's the only thing that kind of addresses the disparity between income earned for a PT versus a PTA, but I don't know that that's what the intent was when it was created. Staff, for simplicity's sake and recommendation, have said, the structure of which we propose the fee caps at should kind of follow the existing structure, right? We're not saying that the delinquent fee should be any higher of a percentage. That would require a legislative change. But even when it comes to the application fee and initial licensing fee for a PT, those should be done proportionately, right? Half and half kind of. And then we're not recommending a change of increasing or adding, I should say, an initial licensing fee to the PTA structure. It works well. It would also require a large IT change in the process, which would be costly for this board and might even offset it, right? Because we're not talking about a huge revenue generator, just increasing application fees. They're a small proportion of our revenue.
Okay, so for simplicity's sake, can we just make everything $25 more than it is? I don't want to make that differentiation, like you said, between PTA and PT. And then I just want to see and that's just a small increase.
Very minimal help.
But this is based on your 5% unanticipated, this is your projections yeah.
But those will always be there, right? So that while it's projected forward, it's demonstrated.
So a small change in our fees once we get the caps increased already looks a little bit better for us in our bottom line.
It will be better in the bottom line. It'll slow, right? It takes that red away
Yeah.
from happening as quickly.
And
And there is a
this goes out to 2031 though.
right, and there is a strategy to look at, and that's what I referred to as kind of those incremental fee increases, whatever you can do to sustain operational need.
Mhm. With due diligence, because you're
Absolutely.
evaluating it every
But the $25 fee increase itself, $25 across the board, never gets you higher than that 10-month fund condition. I'm just going to.
I'm looking at that right now. I know, the thing is it went to green and I'm like.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Green is misleading, Matt.
Yeah, it should be read out
I'm
here.
like, that doesn't make any sense.
Um,
Okay,
I appreciate the green because anything higher than 3, right? I've experienced 3 weeks. Right. So a 3-week fund condition is not exactly ideal.
yeah, so we're saying that a 6.9 is yellow.
Yes, it's still yellow in my.
So, yeah, and so another thing to consider is this sort of process that we're going through right now, just increasing the caps, was successful for 4 programs last year and 3 programs the year before. We've kind of built this into the system now, just adjusting fees. And there were examples where programs doubled their existing caps. So they went to their floor and then they took their caps and they doubled it, kind of, 300 to 600. Not saying that they're going to do that immediately, but one is that, as Mr. Kaiser said, the law wouldn't become effective until January 1, 2027. And then you would have to do another analysis to see what the costs are in a year's time. And then we would have to align that with a board meeting, right? Because you board members would have to vote and take an action on that. And then the regulatory process can take, say, a year to do it. So we're really talking about 2020, probably July 2028. So we are downstream before that would take effect.
But that goes to Sam's. Why are we? Right.
And then just one other comment. So there are pros and cons to a stepped approach, 325, 375 every other year. So you're on a biennial renewal cycle. So that's one thing you need to consider, right? You want to be fair to that cycle. But then also you could get pushback from licensees saying, you just increased my fees last cycle. Why are you doing it again this year? Right? Why? Just something to consider.
Yeah. And we will have that opportunity to address those concerns. But here today, one of the points that I would make is that this is your worst case scenario plan, right? Like what your cap recommendation should be, should speak to any possible inevitability, right? Any potential outcome that might come, right? So, and use historical data to make that determination. Look at what we've done in the past, what's happened when it comes to the enforcement line item, and the increases in expenditures for the Office of the Attorney General and OAH that really is shared amongst all of the Department of Consumer Affairs boards. We can anticipate that's going to happen again because the cost of business affects everyone above us and below us. So while we're contemplating how this might affect our licensees and our applicants, which we should, that's part of that due diligence, we also have to consider how it affects us and how we're being billed by outside entities, right? So the cap itself, and to Matt's point, not only is it recent experiences with other boards who have more than doubled their statutory caps, it's our shared experience, right? In 2009, we went and doubled our caps, right? It's not unusual. It's actually expected and anticipated.
And I'll just add to that, we went back to the legislators at 2 sunsets, requesting to extend it, and we did not get that. So if that happens again,
It's possible, and then
we will
have a
be.
whole different
Yeah,
conversation.
so in other words, if we anticipate or determine that we're going to make it lower than a double, we might be stuck
Mhm.
waiting for another approval for increasing the cap, not the fee. Right? Okay.
To add to that a little bit is how much latitude is the board being given in terms of let's say I do a fairly large increase in the fee,
Mhm.
and does the board have the authority to suspend that?
Yes, and that's kind of, it goes back to that guidance in the fund condition where if you do a large increase and those revenues start to exceed your expenditures and your fund condition continues to grow, Matt pointed out, there's actually a legislative ceiling of 24 months, right? At no time should have more than 24 months in reserve, meaning that if we find that maybe we did overestimate in the fee increase and or your licensing population starts to diminish and the activity starts to diminish, when that happens, then you have to start the promulgation of regulation process to lower your fees so that you don't hit that 24-month threshold. So the latitude's there, but it's through the regulatory process.
So, so if I did get an approval of a fee increase, let's say to $500,
Mhm.
um, the board cannot unilaterally decide that I'm going to suspend that increase or after the approval, initial approval, for let's say the next 2 years.
Not in the simple stroke of a pen sense, right? It would take more, it would involve the regulatory process. So through the normal budget report here, as staff reports to you, and you see that fund condition start to grow, and we think that it's too much of a burden on the licensing population, commensurate with that fund condition, this board would direct staff to craft language, to do a regulation, to reduce a fee, right? To stem that growth, which again starts that whole process. It comes back here, we propose the language to the board adopts the language, and then we enter into the regulatory process. And all of those things operate on their own cycles, right? And thank you, Matt, for pointing out, this all surrounds a 2-year biennial renewal process. So those are some things to consider. The other things to consider are all of those things would require IT changes, right? We would actually have to go into our licensing system and adjust the fees each individually and the accounting codes, because the monies that were collected at the old fee are one accounting code and the monies that are collected with the new fee are another accounting code. So that could slow us down a little bit too, right? It could slow down any change for that matter.
And if I might just add, so there is one program right now that is we identified as exceeding the statutory cap at the end of the last fiscal year. And so we monitor all of the fees, where all of the programs, all of the revenues, all of the funds. I help complete a report, a biennial report that goes to the legislature and goes to the governor. So we're constantly monitoring the health and the status of each fund. We know what the revenues are coming in. So we did have a program that was on our watch list because it kept accelerating. They had a massive growth in their licensee population due to some administrative outreach and programs. Massive increase in their licensee population since the COVID. And so 23, we were watching it, 24, and bang, they exceeded the 24-month cap. So knowing that they were doing that, we started conversations. I went to their board meetings. We started these conversations. They promulgated regulations, or they're in the process of promulgating regulations to become effective July 1. It's actually already was approved by OAL and the Department of Finance. So we were monitoring that. You also may not want to go all the way up to your limit, your 24-month limit, right? That is set in by Business and Professions Code. That's the law. But maybe you're saying, you know what, really we don't need 20 months. We don't need, 15 months. Whatever, again, it's your threshold, right? What you feel comfortable with and what your constituents feel and, what the stakeholders feel comfortable with.
I really appreciate the objectivity of this information and how we're approaching it. And I hope that all the stakeholders, since this is public, realize the conscientious nature of the board looking at the really slow increase. But I have to say, one other thing that is to me relevant is the comparative of other like professions, like where do we sit regarding these? And then you brought up another point, Mr. Kaiser, regarding the differential between income, between PTs and PTAs, and determining that, and recognizing that our licensee population and how much they may be limited and how much they make based on factors outside of that control. Can you kind of speak to those two issues so I can understand
Yeah,
we
I,
can-
so dare I say, not just comparative, but competitive, right? So from one profession to another, looking at the examination process, and um, you don't want to be an outlier in an extreme cost for something compared to a very similar occupation under healthcare. And we don't have that issue. In fact, it's kind of the other way around a little bit. So, but for measurement, and just speaking of those ratios again, um, the sustainable cost, right, of this board is 80% rooted in their revenue of renewal fees themselves, the licensing population itself. Um, Currently $300 every 2 years, $150 a year. It's a little bit more than $10 a month, right? I mean, I don't want to diminish it in its value in any way. But I'm also proud of the services that we're able to provide with that. And then to highlight that idea that this board is solely special funded. There is no taxpayer revenue, not when it comes down to, as Matt eloquently put, the rent, keeping the lights on, paying the bills. All of that comes from the application fees and the renewal fees that are generated by this licensing population. Um, Having said that, I think that's part of the staff recommendation of keeping the existing structure, right, of the application fee structure for PTAs versus PT, where, yes, there's an application fee and an initial licensing fee for PTs. It's a combined fee that's the same as the application fee for PTA, because that's the only thing that we have that we might even be able to point to that leads to the disparity in income. Effectively, though, the application fee process itself is almost exactly the same, right? They same national exam concept, the same criminal-based background check, the same processing, same web portal, same maintenance of IT costs, same staffings. Volume is really the only key difference there, right? For renewal itself, a little over 30,000 PTs, a little over 10,000 PTAs. The fees are effectively the same because the administration of those licenses is effectively the same. Same concept, same renewal structure, same application, ask the same questions, investigate the same types of complaints. And typically, if there is a complaint involving a physical therapist assistant, we're also going to be looking at the supervising physical therapist. So there's a companion case to that. So we don't see any reason to kind of stray away from the existing structure. The math, the basic math should still be the same. If a renewal fee increases for a PT, it should also increase for a PTA. If the application fee increases for the PT, it should also increase for the PTA, because the PT has that additional initial licensing fee involved in it. Does that make sense?
So what I hear you saying is, in terms of our sister healing arts professions, we are not, we're comparable, if not a little bit lighter, depending on,
I'm very comfortable in saying comparable.
okay.
And again, there's nuanced differences between some of the other healthcare boards and us, because as I'll take nursing as an example, because they have such a significantly larger population than we do, they can divide the costs amongst more licensees. And so you will get some efficiencies there from volume model. And then for some of the boards that I would say are kind of our most closest Venus, some of them have higher renewal fees than we do. Some of them have the same, and some of them are slightly lower. It just depends on where they are in their growth and their structure and their evolution. The really key difference I see in some boards is the application process itself. And the key differentiator there is usually how involved the board is in the administration of the examination process. And if
We-
that's a pass through or right.
And we're not as.
But that's something to be mindful of, right? Where we talk about for a PT applying for licensure in the state of California, you're talking about, $450 that's paid directly to the Physical Therapy Board of California. There's also a pass-through cost for fingerprints from out of state that go straight to DOJ. There's the examination fees that get paid to FSBPT that are almost the same as the application and initial licensing fee that they would pay to this board. So entry is still, we're only about 40% of the initial entry costs for an applicant to think about coming right out of a program and into the profession. So, and that's just something to be very mindful.
Okay, one last interactive. Can you put into there, Matt, the doubled, which is from 300 to 600, so we can see what that funding condition looks like?
So doubling does, in effect, double your revenues, right? This would eliminate any doubt or any concern for you moving forward over the next, 4, 5, 6 years, unless some extraordinary event happened. But based upon this model, it would certainly put you in a solid foundation to make any adjustments moving forward.
I would just ground the extreme nature of the projection, right? It would be, so first I would say as the administrator, I see no need in effectively doubling
Mhm.
revenue anytime soon. So that would be the first one. And if that's ever a doubt, the other part, the system was designed in such a way that I couldn't anyway. I would have to substantiate whatever fee increase through regulation with actual numbers to maintain operational need, along with association support and licensing support and any other stakeholders that might have comment, competitors and other healthcare boards, those kind of things. But that cap that effectively shows you jump from,
Mm.
8 months of a fund condition to potentially well in excess of the 24 statutory cap is assuming that all of our expenditure revenues remain relatively stable with nothing but a 3 to 5% increase from one fiscal year to another, along with that $400,000 projection for augmentation, maybe made permanent by that point. All we have to do is look in the rearview mirror and know that that's not the case, right? We went from 150 to 300, and it became a reality in 7 years. So, and that was because when I took over this board, we had just over a $2 million budget.
Mhm.
So that's important to understand too, is that 15 years ago, right now we're at 7.2. We got close to 8, right? And then we had the 8% reduction. But this board has, and not just this board, all boards, right, have had exponential growth because the economy has changed significantly in that period of time.
Any board discussion on this? Is anyone ready for a motion? Anybody would like to do the motion? Anyone have an idea of what they want to make their caps based on the information we had? No, it's to propose specific number in the caps that includes the PT application fee, initial licensing fee, the PTA application and initial licensing fee, and then the renewal fees.
which are recommended as presented here.
No,
Oh.
we can discuss that, yeah.
So I guess that's one point that I would make is, so the dashboard was created in such a way with Mr. Shimi's help that you could adjust these numbers. If the board is asking for staff's recommendation, we'd be happy to provide that because it is what is currently displayed on the dashboard now.
Well, I'm saying, do you want, yeah, no, we need a motion and then we can do. Okay, go ahead and read it.
For the board to pursue legislation as part of Sunset Review to amend Business and Professions Code Section 2688 to raise the cap on the fees that may be collected by the board for some applications, licenses, and renewals in amounts not greater than the following. I propose a PT application cap set at $600.
The rest of it?
PT initial license fee
Also the same.
set at three,
Three.
with the PT initial license fee at 300,
Mhm.
with PT application and initial license fee at 300, and PT and PTA renewal fee at 300.
For the PT application and initial licensing fee, if you leave it at 300, that's no change for PT at all.
600, sorry.
I will second.
Okay, is there any other discussion on that? Yeah. Yeah, please confirm the numbers.
6.
Mhm. Mhm.
The PT application and initial license fee will be at 600. The PT and PTA renewal fee will be at 600 as well.
That's what's on there, yes. That's the motion. All right, I will go ahead and take public comment.
Stacy, you mind if I interject before you speak?
Did you say public?
There's,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
oh
ahead.
yeah, please sit. Please sit. There's one last sentence on the proposed language on the
Read on
motion itself.
bottom.
And to authorize the executive officer to confer with the legislator regarding these fees to maintain the fiscal health and of the board.
I second.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Go ahead, public comment.
Stacy Defoe, Executive Director for the California and not much to add to the conversation. I just want to say we appreciate the information. Going through the
I'm sorry, this is a moderator, and I don't believe the mic is on because people on WebEx are not hearing this.
Okay, the green light's on. Can you hear
Thank
me?
you. We can hear now.
I'll start over. Stacy Defoe, Executive Director for California Physical Therapy Association. And just wanted to say we appreciate the conversation, the discussion, the information was great. We do understand the PT board need to look out and make projections and make sure that the board is fiscally sound and so we, as an association, are neutral on this issue because we understand the need for this. We also understand, you know, the licentiates, things, the world is expensive, cost of doing business is going up, cost of everything is going up. And then also the barrier to entry conversation that was had. So we'll just be watching to see how this goes. We appreciate the management of the board. It's we understand that there were some dire predictions that were made a while ago, and due to the management of the board, those didn't come to fruition. Also understanding the need to look forward and make sure that the worst case scenario is covered. So we will just be watching, and we'll be ready to engage in those discussions going forward. We understand that it is a process. Nothing happens overnight. There's a regulatory process. So we'll be here to participate in those discussions as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more public comment in person? Not hearing any. Moderator?
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, pressing *3. We'll give you a moment. I see no request for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? No? Can we take a vote?
Karen Brandon,
Aye.
Dale Armstrong,
Aye.
Tala Califf,
Aye.
Tanya McMillan is absent, and Samuel Q.
Aye.
4-0, motion carried.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for the labor-intensive and very thorough presentation and helping us get to this conclusion.
Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Matt.
Okay. I think we can continue on to number 10 on the agenda. And I'd like to, let's see, for number 10A, Mr. Kaiser, do you have any updates that have been provided by the Federation of State Boards of Physical Therapy?
There is not necessarily updates from the Federation itself, but just as far as involvement of staff and kind of upcoming projects, we are still working on the Sexual Misconduct and Boundaries Committee. In fact, we have a meeting coming up to kind of finalize some of the products, so you can look forward to some of the things that some members have had sneak peeks to as far as pamphlets and materials and resources that were provided now being incorporated into our website, into our social media content, but also being very uniform across the United States. So a lot of the same guidance and resources being utilized by multiple jurisdictions at that point. I think that's right now, that's about it. There is a workforce data project that's still in the works, but I don't think I'll have anything to update on that until after the June meeting.
All right. All right, we will move on to B, which is California Physical Therapy Association updates provided by Ms. Island.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? Yes. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am Tamika Island, the Executive Associate of Professional Affairs with the CPTA. Just a couple of reminders from the CPTA. We like you to save the date for our annual conference, which will be held September 19th through the 20th in San Jose at the Doubletree Hotel. It is located immediately next to the San Jose Airport, and we hope to see you there. Our membership continues to be strong at more than 10,000 members, and we are hopeful that a fair percentage of those members will be in attendance at our conference. For an education update, CPTA's education programs continues to be strong, especially Webinar Wednesdays and our clinical instructor courses. The goals are, our goal is to host 3 Webinar Wednesdays each month, which would be a total of 36. 5 virtual weekend courses, 12 CI courses, which are virtual, and 1 in-person CI course. For advocacy, CPTA held its 2026 Legislative Day on Tuesday, March 17th, just this past Tuesday. We had more than 150 physical therapists, physical therapist assistants, and students in attendance, so it was very well attended. And more than 30 legislative meetings were scheduled with legislators and staffers. We're also excited to announce that we did successfully introduce our own sponsored legislation, which is to modernize the California PT Practice Act. That bill number is AB 2497, authored by Assemblymember Natasha Johnson, based in Assembly District 63, primary city of Corona. We're very excited about this bill, and we look forward to working with Assemblymember Johnson. In summation, AB 2497 would ensure that the Practice Act is current and allows PTs to practice at the highest level of their current education and skilled training. The legislation strengthens patient access to physical therapy, improves care efficiency, and aligns California with national standards. There is the proposed removal of the 45-day, 12-visit physician signature requirement, the ability to perform tissue penetration for the purpose of treating the neuromuscular system. It would potentially authorize physical therapists to order or refer to imaging, perform and interpret musculoskeletal ultrasound imaging, and prescribe non-opioid analgesic and NSAIDs, explicitly prohibits opioid prescribing. It would also allow physical therapists to prescribe, store, and administer topical medications and make the DPT as the regulatory designator. As always, we appreciate the open lines of communication between our organizations and look forward to continuing that in the upcoming year. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Does anyone have any questions?
No pressure.
Nope. Looking forward to reading that bill. Thank you.
Thank you for the
Just
opportunity.
one question. When do you
Yes.
think we could anticipate draft language for that spot?
We anticipate the bill language, the amended bill language, to appear at some time late this month. So within the next week. The bill was introduced on the last day for bill introduction, which was late February. And that required the bill to sit in print as a spot bill for 30 days. And that's coming up on, I believe it will be over this weekend, perhaps March 21st or so would be the 30th day. So at any point, you could expect to see that language appear. Once we see the official bill in print, I myself will be happy to share that with you, Jason, and your team. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have one more section for agenda item 10, and that is the Department of Consumer Affairs. Ms. Jones, welcome.
Good morning. Almost afternoon. Is this on? There it is.
Yes.
Thank you for letting me be here today. Just wanted to provide a few updates from the DCA's executive office. First, we're excited to share that Chief Deputy Director Christine Lawley has been named as the acting director of the department. She enters this role following the retirement of Director Kimberly Kirkmeyer at the end of December. Director Lawley brings extensive experience to the position, having served in multiple leadership roles within the department since 2013. She will lead DCA in this position until a director is formally appointed by the governor's office. Last year, Governor Newsom took action to assist licensees affected by the Los Angeles fires and swiftly issued an executive order to allow a one-year postponement of license renewal fees that were due for renewal between January and June of 2025, and that was for survivors impacted by the fires. In January, DCA began sending notices to licensees who chose this postponement option with a reminder about the one-year postponement and renewal fee due dates. Licensees with license types in the Breeze system can pay these renewal fees through their online account, and those with license types not in the Breeze system may submit their payments via mail. Also last year, as we have reported on before, the Governor Newsom proposed state budget included a proposal to split DCA's oversight agency, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, into two new state agencies. They'd be named the California Housing and Homelessness Agency and the Business and Consumer Services Agency. The new Business and Consumer Services Agency will be responsible for consumer affairs, licensing, and enforcement, and the Department of Consumer Affairs will be among the 8 departments in this new agency. And these two new agencies do become officially operative on July 1st of this year. DCA leadership continues to participate in multiple agency work groups on the logistics required to make this transition, and will continue to keep board and bureau leadership apprised throughout the next few months. And just as a last reminder, we are in our Form 700 filing season for board members. These forms must be filed, as a reminder, within 30 days of assuming or leaving your appointment and annually by April 1st. This year's annual filing period covers the prior calendar year of January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. So if you've not yet filed your Form 700, as a reminder, the deadline is Wednesday, April 1st, which is less than 2 weeks away. As a reminder also, the Form 700s must be filed through FPPC's e-filing portal. Paper files will not be accepted. You should have received emails from FPPC as well as Board and Bureau Relations with instructions on how to make this filing. If you have any questions, you can reach out to Board and Bureau Relations. And our email is memberrelations@dca.ca.gov for all of your needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any discussion or questions from the board? No? Okay, thank you very much. And we're taking public comment now on agenda item 10, A, B, or C. Any public comment in person? Not seeing any. Go ahead, moderator.
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment, please click on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, press star 3. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no requests for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you again, Ms. Jones. We're going to take a bit of a recess. We'll be back at 11:25. And thank you. We'll be moving on to agenda item 11, hopefully through 6:17. Thank you. Okay. Thank you for returning. We are moving on to agenda item 11, which is executive services update. Mr. Kaiser? Oh, no. Yeah. Are you taking care of Ms. Connolly?
We're gonna take it a little bit out of order.
Oh, okay.
I'll Sarah to do the outreach portion of the executive services report.
Okay.
Ask her very kindly to do the outreach
Um,
services report.
So Ms. Connolly, you're going to do 11C?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is the board ready?
Yes.
So for the outreach update, I'm providing this on behalf of April because she is serving in another role assisting with the meeting today. For the website in fiscal year 25-26 quarter 2, the PTPC had 21,186 web hits through its website page tabs that resulted in an 8% decrease from last fiscal year, quarter 2. For Facebook, the PTPC received 33 likes this year, fiscal year, quarter 2. In comparison to last fiscal year, quarter 2, there was an increase of 4% in page visits and an increase of 65% of page reach. PTPC had a 2% increase in page reach for Instagram and a 6% decrease in profile visits in comparison to last fiscal year, quarter 2. For TikTok, the PTPC had 840 new video views or impressions, resulting in a 16% decrease compared to last fiscal year, quarter 2. But it has 34 new followers. For X, there was a decrease of people reached by 2%, but there was a 200% increase of page engagements compared to last fiscal year, quarter 2. There's also one new follower. LinkedIn had almost 2,500 page reaches or impressions, which is a 30% increase compared to last fiscal year, quarter 2. And there were also 65 page visits, which resulted in a 10% decrease compared to last year, quarter 2, as well as 64 engagements, which is a 5% increase from last year. There have been workshops and webinars that totaled 11, both virtual and in person, to PT and PTA programs. And then I believe Jason was going to speak a little bit about a campaign that's the outreach program is working on.
Yeah, I alluded to it a little bit in my executive officer report. We're working with an analyst from the Department of Consumer Affairs Public Affairs Office to create a campaign to advertise the vacancies for the board member roles for both a governor appointment for a professional member and a governor appointment for a public member. But the campaign work itself is going to be like a product that we can always go back to and utilize should we have vacancies in the future. And it's in an effort to try and kind of create not only a campaign that we can utilize, but even other boards and bureaus of the Department of Consumer Affairs can utilize. It consists of a social media campaign that will post to all of our Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn accounts, but it will have video testimonies from current board members and past board members about their experiences, along with some carousel slides about the application process itself. It's typically a 4-week campaign, so a few posts each week, but the posts change in content from week to week. If at the end of that campaign, they haven't increased the number of applications for potential board members or something like that, we can always go back and reuse the campaign again. So, from what I can see, very high quality product. You'll meet the analyst today, I believe. Some of you may be asked to sit down and answer a few questions about your experience as a board member. Dr. Brandon can tell you about that experience. She was here last Tuesday for our sunset hearing, so we took advantage of it. And shout out to Ebenezer from Public Affairs. He came out and did the interview and took some footage, and we should have some of that end product pretty cool.
Yeah, I can speak to the experience. I think that, uh, the ability for us to demonstrate that real people do this job and that we're not different than other people in that we all want the best for the consumers of California and basically an opportunity to say what our why is, right? And I remember in Southern California, the appointment secretary had come down and did a similar panel of multiple appointees indicating, what is the thing that you felt the most, proud of that you've contributed to. And I think that, sometimes it feels very small what we're doing, and yet it does have a greater impact. And again, whenever I flip to the consumer role and I think about my family members and my friends who are getting these services, it just reminds us of the importance of it. So yeah, it's very unfortunate we still have these vacancies. And also, I'm looking forward to what the people who maybe see these videos are inspired to do for our board in the future. So
Yeah. And
it was
that's
very short. It was like 1 minute, I believe, right? Yeah.
and that's the whole idea, is really just to try to increase the awareness of what board service is, to hopefully increase the number of applications that the governor's appointment secretary office receives, that they have a better pool of candidates to choose from, and that we're just doing our part to get the word out about that. And hopefully we'll collaborate with the association too to push out some of that content. CPTA has a pretty significant social media presence also, so we can multi-purpose the delivery, and just try to get the awareness and the knowledge of what board service and board membership looks like. So thank you for doing it.
Thank you in advance for everyone else participating. All right.
We don't really have a heartbeat on that because those applications go directly to the governor's appointments office for these particular 2 vacancies, right? And then the Senate and the Assembly side appointments are different in process too. But so the first campaign will be centralized on the governor's access point, but that might be something that we have to tweak in the campaign later on, is when vacancies come up for either some other appointing power.
All right. Thank you very much for giving us April's updates. And I think we can move on to A and B when you're ready.
Juggling screens, just one second. So for the legislative update, so a couple of things. We're very early on into the second year of a legislative session. The deadline for submission of bills was in the last week of February. Some of those bills that we are aware of today are still in what we call spot form. So we're kind of aware of the concept or the idea behind the bill, but we don't actually see some of the language. But while there are only 2 bills on today's legislation report, staff have already identified a number of other bills that are both could have an effect on the profession of PT, but or a more broader effect on the whole profession of healthcare, or even just the Department of Consumer Affairs wide. So we are aware of our bill 2774 as being our sunrise bill. That bill has a hearing date of April 21st. So we may have another opportunity to visit the Capitol for that hearing and present. It's usually more kind of a point of ceremony. Another bill that we've identified here is AB 2140. That is a carryover from a previous legislative session. It really speaks to malpractice claims against licensees in healthcare. So that's more of an all of healthcare bill. The legislature itself is going to be going into recess this month on the 26th and then returning back the first week of April. The last day for policy committees to hear and report to the fiscal committees for fiscal bills introduced in their House is April 24th. May 1st is the last day for policy committees to hear and report to the floor non-fiscal bills introduced in their House. And then ultimately, May 29th is the last day for each House to pass bills introduced in its own House. And then again, they'll resume on June 1st. So we will have a much more in-depth discussion about bills at our upcoming June meeting. The other bill that we are very aware of is AB 2497, which Tamika Island just spoke to about the modernization of the Practice Act. So as soon as we receive that language, we'll make sure that it gets disseminated out to the members. But other than that, there are some bills that we will be reporting on, but most of them are direct relation to healthcare, not specific to physical therapy, or direct relation to the Department of Consumer Affairs, not specific to physical therapy.
All right. Any questions or discussion? Not for that part. We're going to move on to the rulemaking.
I wish I had more to update you on the rulemaking report. Staff and I are still working with reg attorneys to craft proposed language as it pertains to continuing education changes, which I wouldn't say there's a lot there, right? There's some kind of significant tweaks that we've experienced over time that we will be proposing in language there. The more significant package is addressing the resource draw for the continuing competency program and utilizing the legislative authority to pass on those costs as fees for recognized approval agencies, providers, and even licensees. And so I think that will be a much more substantial rulemaking package. And if I had to make a prediction, you might see that language before the end of the year.
Okay. All right. Any comments, questions on Anything from the board under agenda item 11, A, B, or C? Okay. I know April's not here, but I just want to say thank you for her continued creativity.
She's listening.
Hi, April, for her creativity and really continuing to push. I do want to mention that at the Sunset Review, it was one of our proud moments that we were able to share a little bit about the fact that we are putting it out there for the profession to grow, and the fact that we're going to high schools and um, other institutions and the community so that people understand a little bit more about physical therapy as a profession, so they get interested early. And I think that that really spoke positively to the interest of diversity and diversifying our workforce. So that was I felt like a good moment, right, Dale? I felt like that was a positive thing. All right. Are there any public comments on agenda item 11A, B, or C? Not seeing any in person. Moderator?
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment on this agenda item, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, pressing star 3. We are displaying instructions and will give you a moment. I see no request for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move to agenda item number 12, Administrative Services Update. And I don't think Ms. Casancio is here, so you taking
take
over that? Okay.
Some of the things that we typically talk about, we've addressed some, right? Like the monies, the budget. We've had discussion with the help of Matt. But a little kind of like peek behind the curtain. So some of those growing pains, some of those budgetary constraints, I'll give you a little bit of insight, right? So for purchasing, we've issued internal caps for both operating and equipment expenditures. There's things that we may have been planning on purchasing, end of life cycles, those kind of things, and we've delayed those now until such time as we're in a better financial situation. Travel, even the explanation given, of switching from the San Jose board meeting yesterday and today to just today in Sacramento is a cost savings situation. And we'll continue to keep an eye on that as far as our June meeting and our September and December meetings this year. September and December move into the next fiscal year, so we'll have a different budget to work from at that point. But I would anticipate still having a tight budget at that point. Another example would be training. We've had to limit the number of external trainings that we provide to staff just because of budgetary issues. And we're going to have to do that for at least a period of time until we can address any kind of structural imbalance issues. I would say the same. I'll move into personnel and I'll say the same thing about personnel, right? We have a few vacancies, and typically I usually kind of list out each vacancy, where it's at, what unit it's in. Selfishly, sometimes for promotion's sake, right? Here's another opportunity for us to tell where our vacancies are on our listings, just to increase increase recruitment. And I'm sure that there's staff in the audience that aren't really happy with me because we're not going to be filling some of those vacancies for a period of time because of budgetary constraints. But as soon as we could possibly afford those staffing, we will start that recruitment and provide that relief. In every unit, there's at least one vacancy. And because of that, there's less bodies to divide that work amongst, right? So for the enforcement unit, for the admin unit, for the licensing unit, I'm well aware of how that work is being absorbed by the existing staff, and I appreciate it. So relief will come. I just don't know how quickly at this point. So, but that's just another example of where we're trying to be mindful with those monies and save where we can and live within our means. But if there's any questions that you have about existing budget expenditures or anticipated revenues, I'd be happy to answer.
I had a question about page 82. Is this um, year to date per diem overtime lump sums as in addition to the temporary position that we currently have someone in? Like the per diem is per diem for current staff, overtime for current?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
And that is year-to-date information, and that temp help is actually one of those vacancies that is current that will not be filled for a period of time.
Got it. I do want to bring up the fact that one of the potential questions that we were reviewing with the sunset review was, as we are not fully staffed, how we answer the question of us getting the timely deadlines for our processing and where that hits us the most, whether that's enforcement or
Yeah.
licensing.
Yeah, I think
So there's a balance there that we can't let it affect us negatively on the other side, because our strat plan is really about making
Yeah.
sure that we're upholding those timeframes. And I think that's also important, especially what we've been hearing from the stakeholders about completion of their application.
Yeah. I think the one that you're referencing specifically, though, in the issues paper from the committee regarding our sunset was about performance measure 4 in enforcement and whether we're able to complete complaint received to outcome, right? Whether that outcome be, closure of the complaint or discipline levied against a licensee within that 520-day period. But I think that really is the point, is that for the enforcement analysts, we did have a recent retirement, right? And so with that retirement comes a distribution of caseload that particular analyst had, and it gets distributed amongst the other analysts in the enforcement unit. And because of the financial situation we're in, we're delaying the recruitment for the replacement of that. Hence, more cases divided amongst fewer people. Ultimately, there's really no way to dispute it. It's going to result in an increase in timelines. Performance measure 4 is interesting in the sense that, well, you know what? I'll save that one till we get to the enforcement conversation.
No worries, no worries.
No, but your question is appropriate across the board, right? I mean, whether it's applications received and processed timely, bills getting paid by the administrative services unit, time cards being processed timely, all of those kind of things come back to you got to have bodies to do it. So
There's a balance, and it happens in the budget in this area. So thank you. All right. Is there any discussion or questions for administrative services update? Any public comment? Not noting any in person. Moderator?
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name or pressing star 3 if you've called in. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no request for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item number 13, licensing services update. Mr. Rowe, Mr. Argento, welcome. Thank you for representing.
am I sitting next to Paul?
Good morning, Dr. Brandon, board members, executive staff. I'm Paul Rowe. You guys all know that. I'd like to provide you with an update on application services activities for the first 2 quarters of fiscal year 25-26. Overall, initial license applications increased by 13% compared to the same period last fiscal year. Breaking down that further, generally physical therapist applications were up 12%, and physical therapist assistance applications increased by 14%. Coincidentally, among U.S. educated applicants, PT applications rose 12%, and PT applications also increased by 14%. We also saw a notable growth in all and other categories. Foreign educated applications increased by 19% from quarters 1 and 2, and endorsement applications rose even more sharply, up 25% from last year. In contrast, my military applications decreased slightly, down 5% from quarter 1 and 2 for fiscal year 24-25. Looking at compositions of the 1,640 initial applications received, 93% came from U.S. educated applications. Of those, 68% were exam applicants and 32% were endorsement applicants. Foreign educated submissions made up just 6% of the total, and the military applications accounted for only 2%. Processing times during this period remained within target. For U.S. graduates, the average processing time for applications receipt to license issuance or closure was 22 days. Foreign educated applications averaged 58 days, and military applications were processed in the fastest, averaging 5 days. To put that in context, our target turnaround time are 45 days for complete endorsement applications and 90 days for new graduates. So we are performing well within our expectations. Finally, in license and maintenance, we processed 42 retired status requests in the first half of the fiscal year. That reflects a 40% increase over the 30 requests received during the same period last year. And average processing times remain excellent at just 1 day. Happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So our total applications processing is going down. Looks amazing, right? Our
Yeah.
time frame,
Time frame.
except the foreign train. And you said we had an increase.
An increase.
Significantly.
Yeah.
And there's how many of our staff process?
Those one.
Just
Teresa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was only this quarter.
Yeah.
Okay. We were looking.
Yeah. Hers went up and mine went down.
You're military.
I'm military.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I just
noticed
think
that.
I'm thinking that maybe because of things going on in the world and they're not letting military members move around as much.
Mhm.
That's the only thing I could think of.
Mhm.
Because last year it was like everyone was moving around, East Coast to West Coast, back and forth.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The sample rate for Ms. Gutierrez is lower, right? So those percentages increases. You got to just kind of keep it in mind,
Thousands.
right? It's not, but it is interesting just kind of look at that data, right? And so one of the things that I was just thinking as we were sitting here talking about is we have access to better data analytical tools. We could probably load the increases and the decreases in application received based on methodology
Mhm.
and look at trends. Like as an example, one of the things I would say, endorsement applicants going up during this time of the year is usually expected. California is a beautiful place to travel during this time of the year. So we have our traveler PTs and PTAs taking assignments in California. But compared from one year to the next, what could explain that, right? So if we could throw that in and maybe drill down into that data a little bit, it could be interesting. But for foreign, and this has kind of come up a couple times in conversation today, is the number of applicants that we receive is fairly low, but the process is much more analytical, and the allowance in the application process for time, because of all the different requirements for foreign trained, can make an application span a long period of time, right? Well over the year that our
Very intensive. Yeah.
right. So, but there is also, you know, no better person to handle it than Teresa, right? Like she's
He's a superstar.
And I would say there might be things that can't be controlled that have to do with status of work, visa, et cetera,
Waiting for education stuff.
documentation.
Yeah.
you know, finding clinical placement, having
Yeah.
that site and clinical instructor approved, serving the actual clinical placement. I mean, there's more. We know that there's a clinical shortage. There's a clinical placement shortage for U.S. graduates. You can imagine for foreign trade students to come in, it can be even more difficult. So,
Yeah, that has been brought
Mhm.
stakeholders regarding that extra layer.
Yeah.
requirement.
I think it was actually the nurses actually brought it up too during your guys' thing about that. I remember hearing that.
Yeah, because they have a very high shortage.
Yeah.
Right.
It's trending with us.
Any other questions? Discussion? All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Is there any public comment? Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. You weren't done. I'm so sorry. Keep going. I apologize.
Good morning, board members. My name is Brett Argento. I'm with the Continuing Competency Unit. I'm going to go over licensee audit stats and approval agencies. For the first 2 quarters of fiscal year 2025-26, combined 222 physical therapists were audited, achieving a pass rate of 92%, down slightly from 96% at this time last year. For physical therapist assistants, 63 licensees were audited for the current fiscal year with a pass rate of 94%, up significantly from 83% at the same time last year. For approval agencies, the number of agencies remains unchanged at 124. Starting in June, our current plan is to audit 5 agencies per month for compliance with California Code of Regulations 139995. At that pace, all agencies would be audited in roughly a 2-year period. However, the audit rate may change as staff gain experience with the process and better assess the time required to complete each audit. And then moving forward, the PTBC plans to test the use of the same cloud-based document sharing platform currently in use by CPS analysts. Pending license approval, staff will pilot the service on a small number of licensee audits to evaluate its effectiveness. If successful, it may be expanded to approval agency audits as well. This approach has the potential to simplify and streamline document sharing during audits by providing a secure, centralized method for staff and agencies to exchange materials. Thank you.
Sorry about that, Brent. I appreciate it. I did have a question to go back to exam information. Just wondering, now that we've had the JAM in place, do we have any comparative information? Specific to passing numbers?
So for let's see, for let me see, national, let's see, PTA, CalJam. So so Q1 and Q2, there was 1,162 and 661. Actually, we're down. We're down 15%. So it's a number. I don't have the pass rate, but I have the numbers of people who have taken it. So I could get back to you on that. I'm not.
Comparative that you're looking for is how the JAM performs
performing.
compared to the
Yeah.
But I don't see any, I don't see.
No.
right. So we're past the reporting time, but we could add it to the June to do a comparative analysis. But the pass rate for what used to be identified as the old California law exam,
Yeah.
had a pass rate that fluctuated anywhere from the mid 70s
Right.
to the mid 80s. Now you're seeing a pass rate of about 98 to 99% because of the cloud delivery and the educational model. But I think that the one thing that we actually could look at too is to see if that's expedited some of the application process, right? Because now they can take it from the comfort of their own home. They don't have to schedule an appointment at a secure Prometric testing center, and be, subject to their calendar or their availability. So, but as far as the exam passing, just anecdotally, we get a lot of feedback from folks, not just from applicants themselves, but from program directors that love the model. And I've even had some program directors threaten me that they're going to, take the exam to get their continuing education requirements, which I've been asking them to do that for years. So
Yeah, it's been two years now in July that we've had the Cal Jam. Yeah, 2 years July. Yeah, so it's been a while. Yeah, it was terrible though. The pass rate was terrible before.
Well, and, it is a different style of test, and so
It is.
there have been some concerns about, well, I'm glad to see it's not 100% because then we'd wonder what is it evaluating, right?
Yeah, there you go.
So even looking at last year, quarter two at 84%, and it's
Mhm.
pretty much a follow, answer question, go back and find where you got that wrong and why, right? So,
Or we're hoping that they're actually reading it before they take it.
well,
Yeah.
and the
that's
84% that you're talking about
Mhm.
is the juris assessment module for the national level,
Okay,
right? So for every state that also offers that same type of exam.
got it. All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any questions or comments from the board members? No? All right. Thank you. Any public comment on item 13?
I have one comment.
Oh,
And I'm going to use some physical therapist terminology to like set an expectation for the continuing competency program. Brett said at the rate that they're going to audit recognized approval agencies, they should be able to finish that within 2 years. And I think that's a very good objective goal. But subjectively, it's a good goal. But we might find that in those audits that, trying to take on 5 recognized approval agencies a month could be a heavy lift, right? Because some of these agencies are going to have hundreds, if not thousands, of courses in their content library. So I just don't want, I want to be clear and transparent and have the board members not hold 2 years from now that we haven't audited every recognized approval agency up to that point.
They have to adapt as we go.
Yeah,
all right.
but an excellent objective goal.
That also means that you go faster in some months.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave it open for you. All right. Thank you. Is there any public comment now? Agenda item 13. All right. Not seeing any in person. Is there any public comment online?
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, pressing *3. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no request for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, team. Appreciate it. All right, we're going on to agenda item 14, Consumer Protection Services update. I think James, Mr. Heaton, thank you for joining us, representing your unit. Oh. Good afternoon.
I'm Jim Heaton. Fairly new.
Mm-hmm.
How long you been with the board?
I'm sorry, this is the moderator and I don't believe the mic is on.
Yep. Brett turned it off, sorry.
No worries.
So in the second quarter of fiscal year 2025-26, the CPS unit worked to finalize cleanup of data entry and enforcement processes in response to the Department of Consumer Affairs efforts to improve and streamline department-wide annual reporting. Information for the 24-25 fiscal year annual report was confirmed and finalized in this quarter using the updated processes. The CPS unit and the PTBC management continue to hold regular meetings with our contacts at the Division of Investigation and the Attorney General's office to discuss outstanding issues and cooperate to ensure effective case and program management. CPS staff and board management worked with DFI, Solid, and staff and management of other DCA boards to review and update Solid's Enforcement Academy training materials. The Enforcement Academy is a multi-day comprehensive training that covers the entire enforcement process from complaint intake through investigation, disciplinary action, and probation monitoring. And I think we're having that course starting, I think it's next week. We're going to have a few of our analysts attend that. The first cohort to attend the updated training includes experienced enforcement staff who will provide feedback to Solid on the training's content and materials for future cohorts. Now I'll briefly highlight and explain the Q2 statistics report for the CPS unit. Performance measures track and report on the enforcement process from intake to case closure, either with or without administrative disciplinary action. With performance measure number 1 is simply a count of the number of complaints and arrest conviction reports the PTBC received and initiated cases for. In Q2, we received a total of 161 cases, including 121 consumer complaints and 40 reports of arrest or conviction. PTBC received 7% more cases this year compared to this time last fiscal year. In performance measure number 2, it measures the average number of days that it takes to initiate a case and to send an acknowledgement letter to the complainant after receipt of the complaint or report of an arrest or conviction. This quarter's average is 3 days, which is well under the target of 9 days. While the CPS unit has consistently met this target in the past, new processes within SharePoint have made it easier for staff to forward complaints to the CPS unit to be initiated, while ensuring the intake analyst has all the information necessary to initiate a case. Moving on to performance measure number 3, that reports on the average case age in days for all cases that did not result in referral to the Attorney General's office for formal discipline. The average case age was 187 days for this quarter, which is 10% higher compared to last year. These numbers are known to fluctuate greatly as they reflect an average of all cases and encompass the entire investigative process that involves the timelines, workloads, and response times of not only CPS staff, but of all involved parties and agencies. PTBC's target for this performance measure is 180 days, so we're just real close to being within that target. But it's important to note that 68% of the cases were closed within 180 days or less. Performance measure number 4, Jason briefly touched on that, and I'd love to say that we had a bunch of decreases in this measure, but not going to be the case. But performance measure number 4 captures the average case age in days for cases that were referred to the Attorney General's office for formal discipline. 10 cases were finalized at the AG's office this quarter, taking an average of 876 days from receipt of complaint to case closure. This is a significant increase over the average last fiscal year to date. However, with a small number of cases involved and the complexity that can be involved in cases that result in discipline, most of the cases closed this quarter took 2 years or more to complete, well beyond our target of 540 days, which is about 18 months. But it's important to note that in addition to this performance measure includes the involvement of not only our enforcement staff, but also of all the involved parties and agencies, such as the reporting party, licensee, involved healthcare facilities, the DFI, the AG's office, and the Office of Administrative Hearings. So there's a lot of different variables that go into the complaint process. So in summary, for quarter two of fiscal year 2025 and 26, staff initiated 161 new cases, issued 14 citations, completed 145 desk investigations, referred 19 cases to the Attorney General's office, and closed 10 cases after referral to the AG's office. The disciplinary summary of all formal discipline issued for quarter two of fiscal year 2025-26 is attached to the report. In quarter two, there are 5 licensees were issued public letters of reprimand, 2 licensees were placed on probation, and 1 licensee lost their privilege to practice physical therapy by revocation order. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion? Comments, board? I wanted to identify something here. It looks like for the highest increase, well, maybe not in everything because I'm looking at now at investigations only, but the investigations only. Can you describe what investigations only is in the section where it says transmittals to Attorney General?
So the target time of 180 days can be broke down into those 3 categories. But
Mhm.
most investigations, these timeframes can go from one fiscal year to another.
Mhm.
Right. So we're trying to break that down a little bit further because there's a carryover, right? Where cases might have been intake and investigation last fiscal year. In this fiscal year's reporting, they may only be posted. They're still with the AG. We're still talking about a stipulated settlement, or they're going to the Office of Administrative Hearings. So they are only categorized as post investigations only at that point. Those are usually the stragglers. That's why the number's lower, right? Those high-level complex cases that are either intricate when it's at the investigative level or the prosecutorial level for the AG, or we're waiting on an OAH calendar, right? Like an actual hearing to be set and scheduled, which right now is about 5 to 6 months in advance, versus the cases that are more within our control at the desk analyst or DFI's case. And you'll see those kind of fall more into the investigation only statistic, which is why the number's higher.
Okay, so intake only. So I'm looking under the transmittals to AG. So
Mhm.
AG cases total increased, and then intake only went down because it moved to the next point.
Mhm.
And then investigation only is not considered pre-AG transmittal.
No, well, it could be. It could cross into both territories, really, right? It's not a linear process.
Mm.
It's kind of a back and forth process sometimes. So you could have investigation only that is occurring between both PTBC enforcement staff and DFI, but has not been referred to the AG.
Got it.
But you can have cases that are referred to the AG that the AG identifies requires further investigation, more evidence collection needed, and goes back. So again, not linear. Um, those cases where we've made a significant investment in resources with our investigation, they do go to the AG, and the AG says that there's still some investigation to be done. You can reasonably expect that to add to a larger timeline for that particular case. Those are the cases where it's not just the complexity of the case. It could be, as for a couple different examples, how responsive is the respondent in the matter? Are they participating in the investigation? Are the witnesses participating in the investigation? In the instances where it involves criminal activity, are we able to obtain the arrest reports and the court dockets? Some counties and cities are easier to receive documents from than others. Sometimes we have to pay for those documents, and that can be, each one is its own puzzle to solve. Some are very easy to pay for, and some are very difficult to pay for. And then I guess what I'd layer on top of that is divided amongst fewer bodies at the analyst level,
Mhm.
right? So the case redistribution can have an effect on it too.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned about going out to get arrest reports and stuff. With some of them now where it's online, like with CHP,
Mhm.
it you submit it to them, within a day or two, you're getting it back. Much, much faster than when we have to send out snail mail to them to get it and wait for it to come back.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting that now because of online, things will speed up, and I think that that might help reduce some of the timelines that we have for our cases because we're able to get things back faster.
We are seeing
And it's not uncommon to have respondents or the complainants. We have to send out 2 and 3 letters before they even respond.
we're starting to see kind of those signs of modernization throughout government, including law enforcement. And CHP is a good example of that. But Carol's staff are also good at becoming aware of and familiar with each individual county and municipality and how those communication lines work. They've got cheat sheets with like contact names on them. They work collaborative, like in fact, the CHP portal discovery was as a result of one of the analysts sharing that information with all of the other analysts. Um, and the CHP one is a big deal, but all you really have to think about is like jurisdictional boundaries and that kind of thing. A lot of those things will come through the highway patrol, but there are so many more that come through a sheriff's office or a police office. They won't be included in that database. So CHP is a big chunk and it helps us quite a bit, but we still have to hunt down a lot of docs.
Jim, is everyone getting an opportunity to do the training in your unit?
We are.
Okay.
Yeah. we are.
Well, so for the Enforcement Academy next week, I wish we could send everybody,
So I was wondering.
right? But everybody can't step away from cases for
Or
a
else we'd
4-day period of
close
time.
down.
For a whole week at a time, yeah, we can.
And there's also a volume on the academy side, right? Like what they can handle and how many people, because this is for the whole of the Department of Consumer Affairs. So all the healthcare boards, Bureau of Automotive Repair, contractors, state licensing board, all of that. So we have 2 senior analysts going for this first cohort to provide feedback. As a previous member of the enforcement staff, I had the advantage of going to the Enforcement Academy so long ago. And it was extremely beneficial. And I think a few of us subject matter experts, Mr. Martin in the back of the room and I, will be presenting at that Enforcement Academy. And we hope to make that as valuable of a training as it was for us when it was provided to us.
Yeah, all the analysts have gone through the clear training that we had. We
Yeah.
all had that.
Yeah. All right.
But after this cohort, we will look at the balance of the enforcement analysts and we will run them through the Enforcement Academy for DCA. It's actually a statutory requirement that the Department of Consumer Affairs provide this Enforcement Academy training all across the department. The clear training that Jim mentions is the national investigator training that Clear provides. But I kind of told you guys we're not doing any external training until we get some money. So, and we have a few analysts that I'd like to send to Clear training in the next year or two, and we'll see if we can squeeze it and make it fit. But that's an invoiceable training where we pay an outside agency for.
Yeah. So as we get the opportunity because of the cost and just rotate people through. Okay. Are there any more comments or questions on agenda item number 14? No? Okay. Any public comment in person? Any comment online?
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, pressing *3. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. I see no request for comment. I return the floor to you.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Appreciate your presentation. We're moving on to agenda item number 15, probation monitoring services update. Mr. Martin. Lone Ranger.
Okay, that's better. All right, I am reporting on the probation monitoring stats for Q2 of fiscal year 2025-2026. During the second quarter of fiscal year 25-26, the number of licensees on probation decreased from 59 to 56 licensees that are on probation for various reasons. Besides the 42 licensees on probation and actively working in the state, there were an additional 4 out-of-state probationers tolling or not receiving credit toward completion of probation, and 10 in-state probationers tolling due to unemployment or underemployment. 2 licensees were placed on probation in the quarter, and 5 licensees completed probation in the quarter. 0 probationers had their licenses revoked in the quarter, and 0 probationers exercised their option to voluntarily surrender their license to the board. Of the 42 licensees that are not currently tolling, 11 of those are enrolled and participating in the board's substance abuse rehabilitation program, which is now has Premier as the contractor that has switched from Maximus as of the beginning of the year. And that equals about 26% of all the licensees on probation that weren't tolling that are in that program. 1 licensee enrolled in the program in the quarter, and 1 licensee successfully completed that program. There were 2 instances of noncompliance with probation in the quarter, and those were minor violations for not showing up to a scheduled interview with the probation monitor. Those folks were contacted and noticed that they were in violation of their probation for that. That's all the stats I have. Jason already mentioned I will be participating as a subject matter expert at the Enforcement Academy for the probation section of that. So I'll be doing that next week. Should be fun.
Yeah.
That's it.
Questions or comments? All right. Well, you still haven't worked yourself out of a job yet. I see we still have some people on probation.
Slowly decreasing. Actually, I was surprised that there were more completions, that many more completions than people coming on.
Yeah.
Usually in a quarter, it's usually the same amount of people coming on as going off, so the numbers stay pretty consistent. From time to time, you have that where more complete, if there's early terminations of probation, things like that, where people complete earlier than expected. Sometimes you get numbers where more people are completing in the quarter than coming on, but it's usually pretty consistent. The same number coming on and going off. I don't know how that works, but it tends to do that.
Yeah. I don't think I'm intricately aware of who's coming on, but because we are signing the congratulations
Mhm.
completed with probation, I feel like that has been pretty steady in the last 2 quarters.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's interesting your perspective. You would know how many are coming in and how many are leaving. Great. Any questions or comments further from the board? Okay. Any in-person public comment? Go ahead.
So just from your experience, Moni, I'm just curious, for the past, let's say 5 years,
Mhm.
has there been overall any inconsistencies with the numbers, or has it been?
Actually, it's been consistently dropping. We had a large number of out-of-state licensees before that were tolling and didn't really have any plans to come back to California. And we started cleaning up those folks and telling them either you need to participate in the probation and send in quarterly reports and have quarterly interviews with me, pay the fees, or surrender the license if you don't plan on coming back. And most of those folks chose to either surrender, or we've had some be like kind of not really replying. And some of those have since canceled. They didn't renew and they just canceled. And so they don't have licenses anymore. So that number has been consistently dropping. And I think we only have maybe one or two of those folks left where they've been tolling long term and don't really plan to come back. But those will be dropping off soon as well. I have one that's going to cancel within the next 4 or 5 months. And then I have another one that is in the process of surrendering their license. So that number will drop, and eventually we'll just have folks that are either here or out of state, but plan on returning at some point. That's the goal, at least.
Okay, back to any public comment in person on agenda item 15. Online.
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, pressing *3. We are displaying instructions and will give you a moment. I see no requests for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Mr. Martin. We are moving on to agenda item number 16, public comment for items not on the agenda. Any in-person public comment? Okay. Not seeing any online public comment for items not on the agenda?
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the hand icon next to your name, or if you called in, pressing *3. We are displaying instructions and will give you a moment. I see no requests for comment. I return the floor back to you.
All right, thank you. And we're moving on to number 17, agenda items for future meetings. Any board members with recommendations or requests? We discussed that we're already putting on the agenda your findings from your subcommittee, correct? Okay. And I do believe we were talking about the completion of the issues paper responses for our subcommittee.
Yeah, I think by then the subcommittee will have already, we have to turn the actual response in by April 9th. So we'll report on what that is at the June meeting.
We probably will have subcommittee meetings between now and, yeah, okay.
Yeah, for both actually, right? We'll have to pull yours and Tanya's availability to meet with DCA.
Right.
And then Dr. Brandon, Dr. Armstrong will have to, they'll have another homework assignment here in the next week.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Any public comment for agenda items for future meeting? Not seeing any in person, any online, moderator?
Thank you, Madam President. If any member of the public would like to comment, please click on the hand icon next to your name, or if you've called in, press *3. We are displaying instructions and will give you a moment. I see no requests for comment. I return the floor back to you.
Thank you so much. We are not having a closed session, so there's no 18. And
Nothing, so you can call for adjournment.
I'm calling adjournment at 12:27. Thank you all for your participation, and